that gives us a way to look forward. Ne? 2040. 2040. Lua rautau o te hainatanga o te tiriti o Waitangi. Tā mukuri anō ke whai whakaro te rāagotanga as we sit here on Waitangi Treaty Grounds today. The question that I'm going to pose of our panel, and it will allow our ministers to listen, and in this question there will also be some context, some barriers, but hopefully some questions that we can find solutions, and each of these kaupapa. And if there is time, we will go to the floor, but mindful of the time of our ministers, there is another ohiri happening up the top. We'll try and get through some of this order as long as possible, but we want to make sure we give them at least enough time to really explain the context of their kaupapa. E te pai tēnā? Ka pai. So, 2040. If 2040 is 200 years from the signing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, what are your visions or your aspirations for your particular kaupapa? And what are actually some of the challenges or barriers that you see getting us there? And from there, we will hopefully get some questions that we can pose to our ministers. Ka pai?
When you think about 2040, it's actually not that far away. So when I thought about this question, it's pretty simple for me. I want my whanaunga and uri of Ngāti Tata to be proud of who they are as Ngāti Tata. And I want that, and the pursuit of mātauranga Ngāti Tata in relation to our taiao, to be just as important as the reclamation of te reo Māori or te reo Ngāti Tata. And so if you think about our ability to do that, you probably don't know much about Ngāti Tata, but we're an iwi that originates from Tāmaki Makaurau, and we have experienced all the bad things you could possibly imagine, as you probably all have. I remember something like Uncle said in one of our court cases, all of Tāmaki Makaurau ships in our harbour, our maunga was quarried away to build the roads in Tāmaki Makaurau. We take water from our awa as drinking water for Tāmaki Makaurau, and our tupuna are mined to build our whare in Tāmaki Makaurau. So our taiao has been attacked from every possible angle. And it's not, taking note, I'm trying not to moan the whole time. And our area is known to be really proactive about trying to protect our wahitapu, our taiao, and have tried to use every single avenue possible to protect the wāhi that are important to us. We've tried through the courts, we've tried through treaty negotiations, we've tried through partnership with council, we've tried by trying to put concepts like kaitiakitanga to law so we have something to hook on to be able to better protect our taiao and to better, for our people to have access to our taiao that is inherently ours. But we don't even have the ability to go onto our maunga sometimes because they're privately owned. We don't have the ability to even protect our urupa because they're mine. There's so many things. And so I'm sitting here, they actually did that. And I'm thinking, do I really want to go down the same path? Not knowing whether it's going to result in anything, because so far we're still unsettled. We're still in a very similar position as we were when they were fighting their fight. And so I guess the partai that I have to the ministers, and it's awesome the portfolios that both of you hold are so relevant to these kaupapa. If we've tried all those avenues, what are some other avenues that are available to us? Or do you think those avenues are still going to result in a different outcome? Should I still use my life to dedicate to pursuing those avenues to protect our taiao, to protect our wahitapu, etc., etc.? Yeah.
Just to, is that about the Maioro plant in Waitangi?
Yeah, I guess, to give context, when I talked about, all of Tāmaki ships in our harbour, it's a Waitangi claim. They'll take from the Waikato River to our claim, I think it's Y1476. The Maunga, we've already settled, we have a collective Maunga, Tupuna Maunga Authority, which now protects the Maunga. And then the Y31 claim is the Māori Iron Sands claim.
Pingi te whakautu nāne, ka tai tatari pia kia mitu katoa.
Ngāti ata tēnā koutou, ka waharau te o whaia ke ngāne ko me kāma. Nōpui te kura o tīpini i ngā 1970s, me o mātua kukukai mā. Me tō rātou pānga ki tōku iwi ki tau kōi. One of the most profound Waitangi Tribunal claims was the Manukau Harbour. And led by the two women, amongst others that I just mentioned, and your lawyer was Sean Elias, who then went on to be the president of the court. Every generation, whether it's on the outskirts of Tāmaki Makaurau, or the Hokianga Harbour, or us, are in a struggle to find a balance between environmental protection and economic development. What we sought to do many years ago was to make the law responsible for upholding things such as wāhi tapu, which were never in the law before. But rangatahi, each generation is confronted by the same thing. Whether it's a little story that I have in Taipā where Kupe's rock was blown to smithereens to make the ballast for the Taipā Bridge. There were two schools of thought. One was that, well, it would bring modernisation, and the other is that it would cut the umbilical cord to Kupe and the traditions of our homeland. Maunga Taniwha, the mountain of his wahine. The Ngāpuhi were divided on that issue. Poho Kohua, putting the TV mast on the summit of Maunga Taniwha. Others said, Emma, if it brings us into the modern communication, it's a compromise we can live with. Each generation will have that struggle. But don't underestimate, please, the effort that's gone into putting into legislation recognition of those values. I know that because in 1989, working with your fire, Ngāneko Manhinik, I was the guy who put them in the Resource Management Act. I just had no idea it quite turned out the way it has. So I say to each generation, be up for the battle. But there are so many other competing perspectives. Please don't be blind to them. And I'm going to repeat what I said. I'm going to stop here. Today, there are 5.2 million people living in New Zealand. We are on a march to go to 6 million, 7 million, 8 million. And unless we have the laws and the infrastructure with such a huge population, there will be more pressure, more degradation on the mahinga kai and other things that you favour. So stand with leaders such as myself, who has been shot down for being a racist in challenging the level of immigration coming into New Zealand. Unless you start to deal with that issue, the pressure will grow year by year by year by year. And I strongly urge you, just don't think about it as an environmental thing. Think about it, what's happening to the population of our own country, when many of my own nephews have all left to go to Australia, and they're never going to come home.
Tēnā koe, taku tua me mihana ki a koe me o tūpuna. I had a great chance to work with your matua roimata and your auntie Pai on various things over the years. But I just wanted to refer back to where Te Wihi and I are partly from, and that's in Mokai Pātea. Now, many of you actually won't know where Mokai Pātea is, but there's a road called the Desert Road. And at the top end of the Desert Road, you go all the way down to a metropolis called Rata. It's just about as big as Waitangi. It's about an hour and a bit drive. And adjacent to the Desert Road is a place that is known as Rangipo Waiu and Orua Matua Kaimanua. that is basically the only area of the country where there is live bombing by defence and security forces throughout Aotearoa. And that place, 65,000 hectares, is the place where our tupuna gathered their eels and their kiore and fed a massive hui in 1860 called kōkaku down at Tūrangarere between Wairu and Taihape, where many hundreds of people arrived to debate the very issues we're debating today, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, rangatiratanga, and everything else. But our people are Mokai Pāti, and I can say this as an observation. We acknowledge that that is the engagement that we've had, and we recognise that the Defence Force will continue to be there, even though we would love our whenua back, all 65,000 hectares. And you have a great chance of being an uri of Ngāti Te Ata with your treaty claims still outstanding to get to a negotiated position on the various kaitiakitanga and other environmental objectives you have. You can talk about the mussel beds in Tikapa Moana of Ngātai and Ngāti Pawa that were ripped out to put in and build Wynyard Quarter and all those areas at the bottom of town. But what they are doing now, particularly in a place like Ngātahi Tāmaki, is partnering with people to reinstate mussel lines and reinstate seaweed lines. So there's different ways, as much as said, different ways to respond, and that's the only thing we can actually control, is the way we respond to things. So kia kaha, I don't know
that that answers the question. She asked, she said that those were the ara, and she asked, yeah, he ara no. So I don't know that that answered the question, but I tonu I ana mahi.
I think koera ki te pathway in terms of Ngāti Te Ata have obviously exhausted a lot of the avenues, including some of the ones that both of you mentioned. Did you just open up the opportunity for treaty talks again in that, or?
No, because Ngāti Te Ata has not resolved its outstanding treaty claims, and they have a pathway to go down there, and also economic and other partnerships. You take Glenbrook, for example. That's a great example where the environmental initiatives have been absolutely skewed by perverse realities, where we say don't use the coal from Huntly, but let's import more dirty coal from Indonesia.
He kāre kore he nui tonu ngā pātai ngari ki whinia ki tuputoro he waiki ki toengo ngā tātou kai kōrero. And I'll note you down some questions, so if we do have time, we'll come back to some of those pātai, some of that extra pātai. Go.
Tēnā kaurua. Hari te mea I hehi anō te tohe nui. I rā ko te mea ki he anō kia āta, kia whai wāhi tātou te wānanga. I pērā te timata I tēnei hui mea ana a ngā pai whakahaere he wānanga tēnei. Nā reira mā, pēnei wānanga na me nangana. Ko te wāhi kia hau ko te reo Māori. Ri te tonu taki hia mo te reo Māori pēnei ngā mea ko hoti a kaurua I roto I ngā tau. Kia rongo te reo I roto I ngā marae. Kia rongo te reo e puta ana I wā tātou tamariki moko puna ko hoti ke ia kaurua tahi. Tērā kōrero, tērā whāinga, kāmutu, te ki ake he taonga tō tātou reo. Ko mōhio tātou ki tērā, nā, e māramana ki tērā whāinga. Tite atu hau ki taku marae, e rongo ana, ai e tuku haere ana te reo e rangi ngā te whakapaukaha o taku marae ake o oku hapu ki tērā tūāhoranga. Ko te mate kē ki te ana a hau I tēnei wā, kia hāngai a hau ki ngā taupā, I nui a mātou, I tēnei wā tonu, I roto I nei rā tata nei, ko te whaka mātāmuri I tō tātou reo, I roto I ngā mea e puta ana, I roto I te whare mata. E mea ana hau, ai, tātou Papa Shane, mohi ana koe ki tēnei tohe mo te reo Māori. Tama, I roto I o tuhinga, I roto I te whare wānanga, e mātou ana koe ki te whakanga mo te reo Māori. Let's not go over that part. We know that it's been hard. We know that both of you have contributed to the revitalisation of te reo Aotearoa. What I'm saying is that here and now today, the things that are coming out of te whare mata and asking kia mātā muri te reo Māori, te mea me mātā mua ko te reo Pākehā, while that might seem like it's only directed to the public service sector, it's landing on the ears of our tamariki. These tamariki that we've all worked to grow, the ones that we've all invested in to grow their reo me tō rātou hia, tō rātou kaingāko ki te reo Māori. This is something that we've all invested in, And whether or not we like it or not, whether or not we say it's just part of the politics, and whether or not we say it's just more convenient to be at Te Reo Māori first, that's not what our tamariki are hearing when they have to go out there and they see and ka rongo and ka tau e rāwhakatau kia rātou kia mātāmuri tonu tō rātou reo. Tō rātou reo tuatahi. We work too hard to make Te Reo Māori a first language for a whole lot of our tamariki for them to hear me noho tuarua te rā reo. And while that might not be the whāinga or the goal or even what you're observing yourself, I can tell you that's what Te Iwi Māori is observing. Kārua. It's easy. I get the argument that places, government departments, they haven't done their right, the duties that they should for Māori with their Māori names. I get it. Māori mana. And we've all heard that talk for a really, really long time. But it's much easier to take the name away from the place than it is to force those places to do the right thing by Māori. Hea te take ke whakai ana tātou kia noho te reo Māori hei papa instead of just making them do the job they're meant to do. Ko era atu pakanga nui nei, yes, we've got heaps of work to do, yes, e tahi o tātou iwi me pati tātou ki o tātou whanaunga kia kōrero Māori, yes, me whakahoki atu i ngā tamariki ki te kāinga, whakāpoi a rātou ki te reo Māori i te kāinga. We know those things. Those things are already happening, they've been happening, you guys have been doing it yourselves. E rangi te wāhi ki te whare mata, let's not make that whare mata and use its processes right now to further alienate our people away from their reo or cause more harm. We've already got enough harm that we're dealing with within our own whānau hapu and iwi that we don't need more. Nā reira ko tāku ki a koutou, what are you going to do about it? Are we going to let it carry on? Are we going to let it carry on? And are we going to let people out there dictate how we view and the things that our tamariki are going to hear? Well, we're going to do something about it. Kaurua, ngā mea ka whakapau ki o kaurua kaha mo tēnei taki. Kia ora.
Tino pai te rongo ki e rā momo, wero hinengaro. Me te mea nei e kore māo ko matua tarara e whakauruka, e whakatūpāpaku i tō tātou reo. Kore rawa. Kia rongo mai, kia kite mai koe i Parliament TV, most favourite television channel in Parliament. Ka rongo koe i taku kōrero i rotu te whare pāramata, kōrero Māori, i te wā, e wā tangau kōrero Māori, kaha ki te kōrero Māori. E te atu o tātou hoa tōranga pū, e moki ana ki te kōrero Māori, te kōrero Māori, i roto i te whare pāramata. Nā reira tuatai, māku e whakatauira te kawi i te reo Māori ki tō mātou whare pāramata. Tuarua, kaore te minita o te kawamata aho, ara ko te komihana o te hunga āpiha, e ki ana me mutu te kōrero Māori, me mutu te reo Māori kaore. Kei te tino tautoko a Minita Willis me te Premier, kia kōrero Māori, kia haka Māori, kia motetea Māori, kia ako Māori, te tini me te manu. Nā reira, rereke e te o ngā kōrero o ngā kairipo ata ki ngā nupepa me era wai me te tiwi, engari tō te minita o te kawa mātāho e tautoko ana ia i te reo Māori, kia kōrero tia ki ngā āpiha o te kāwanatanga. So if you want to speak te reo Māori, if you want to perform in te reo Māori, if you want to haka in te reo Māori with any public service, koira no ngā tūpuna tō mana. You could do that. And actually we encourage that. Now there has been a lot of reports that we are really degrading te reo and running it down. And those are reports. I could say from the Prime Minister, from the Deputy Leader of the National Party, we're absolutely supportive of everyone speaking Māori, talking Māori, kōrero Māori at any time in the public service, wherever. What we don't like is a lot of the discrimination against the use of te reo Māori by others and being amplified and sensationalised in reports in the news. Kia mātou nei, rereke te rā
Sorry, just does that also include written correspondence in te reo Māori from public service?
The key for the public service is that it communicates effectively, and there's a growing number of people, Māori and others, who speak te reo Māori. So the preference is to use te reo Māori, in the interaction with the public service, mahia, ka tika. Most people will use English, but many people, and a growing number of people, will want to use Te Reo Māori. Do that.
I kia hirini moko mi ko tōku whakatupuranga kore take. Nui atu te ngoi, nui atu te koi, nui atu te kaha roti i tō koutou reanga te whakangā, kia reo ruai. I was born in 1959. Hirini moko mi said recently in an interview, it was my parents' generation and our generation that didn't fight for the language. And I have to say, I can see that the new generation are a lot more committed than the majority of my generation was, but there were a few exceptions. And by dint of tipene kura and my grandmother, we learned the language. But listen to me carefully. What did I just say? Every additional 100,000 people coming into our country have no interest in Te Reo Māori. They are coming from war-torn, far-flung places. They regard our land as a haven. I agree with Rahi Papa's sister. Activism is important for the language, but at the end of the day, tēnā ka ora te reo I waingatunu I a tātou, mā tātou anō te reo e whakatupu, e whakamahi, ia te kotahi haora, ia te kotahi rā. Te whatonu e ko, tērā e tahi āhutanga, kei te whakahāwea I tō tātou reo, kei tika tonu. Engari, he ari te mea no nā ko tatawhi nei tēnā āhutangi timata mai. Ki te au I oku kanuhi, no ngā hau I oku pongo I hui te haunga o tēnā mahi no oku I te tamaru. I would say that there's a lot more money, certainly in my generation, when we grew up, a lot more acknowledgement and a lot more legitimization of our reo than in the 1960s and in the 1970s. So please don't let a few wild remarks in an election campaign, which is about wild rhetoric anyway, diminish our commitment to teach our children. I am saddened, ka rongo I tēnā kōrero ōu, kei te whakamoi koreti a tātou tamariki, rā roto I ngā mahi e puta nei te ao tōrangapū. Engari a tātou mā koutou mā ngā mātua, maranga mai, whakamaroro, whakauaua. E hari te mea no nātua tatake nei tēnā āhutanga I timatai. Kei a tātou anō tō tātou rangatiratanga, hei whakamaroro I tō tātou reo. Horakau e pai ana ke riro mā ngā Pākehā tātou e ako. Horakau e pai ana ke riro mā ngā katari kaoratanga e whakaingo I o rātou pōtai ki te taingoa Māori, ko te pūkenga. E mara, nau e nari teka ko te pūkenga. Ko ngā mahi e putana I waho I tēnā tari, hara ko te pūkenga, ko te pokenga. Take tēnā oku e hoa anau ki ngā tangata e pangapanga ingoa Māori ana I o tātou tari kawanatanga kamutu ko te hue putane ori tēnā ki te paraweta.
At the end, I think we could hide to the call will come back for a wrap up, so if you have any last comments, we can come back. Right.
Tēnā tātou, he kaupapa pai tēnei te reo Māori mā whanua e whai atu. Konea hei te rangi nei e koro ana o ngā marae. Ne, o ngā marae. Hea hau nei, e mea he kono ngā noi wā hau o tōku marae, ko Roma marae tēnei, no wai mara. Kaua tōku te maunga, kare i kura moana, tinana waka, Roma tangata, te rawa iwi. Tamai rungi te karama o te wā, waku nei tuatanga, runga te tanga, me wailongia, e kōrero mō ngā kaimanga e o te tatu nei iwi, hoi no te rani nei, ko repi nei, e tuake o te tatu tānu. Weno me maramona tata, he mea pono ngā noa a hau ki te marae, ko aku mai matua, he mea tiaki ngā wai, tiaki te hiko, ngā wharehiti, ngā kāpaki, ngā mahi tono tono. E mō iongia e tātou haramai ki te marae. Ko te rangi nei haramai kora mō ngā take pāngi a mātou, e mea taimahai a mātou pāna ki te tiriti. Ko te take nui e kite ane a hau, ko te toko iti e hoki mai ana ki te marae. Kona te take nui. Toko iti, nā te toko iti e hāpai ana e mahi ana mahi kia tūtotika kia tūpai o te tātou nei marae.
E mohi o pai ana hau ki tēnā mai, ko ki te whānau ki tai tokere, nā te toko iti. Nā te toko iti. Koe, e kahana tātou kororo mo te reo Māori, me kaha tātou hoki ki te marae. Ko reira te reo, ko reira ngā tikanga, ko reira ngā kiwhai āhuaranga hei noho pai ki aku. Ne, tawai te akonga ki te kāinga tuana ki te marae, tauana ki te ao. Ne, I runga I tēnei whakaro o te toko iti, he mea moke nei mahi o aku, hei mea hapa I te marae, ko mate haere haere ngā mātua, ngā mātua ngā whaia keke, e hapa I nei mai, ko taku reanga, he toko iti. Ahakoa e mea e kaha hamamana mate mo te reo Māori, mo te hauora, mo te taiao, e toko iti ana e noho ki te marae. Me te mohi ona tātou, he nui ngā kaupapa I mua te Māori, hei hāpai, ngā mahi taiao. Me pēhā rā e noho atu ki te marae, hui. Rei me tui ana tātou, e tikara. Hoi no, me kaua e ware kia hoki mai, kia hoki mai. Hoi no, nā reira, it brings me to my point. E matua e ngā minister, the uncle, e minister, mea, whakaro he tēnei, paid labour workforce. E maramana hei, you're keen for hard-working Māori, e matua shame. So they're paid to come to the marae. Whakaro hea, paid, ngā mea he kāmora, te tai professional, sparky, professional pamapa. Hei manaki kia tika, hei manaki kia guessworks. Ko ngā akoranga ko honga kia, he mea just no ngā tupuna, engari, just guessworks too. 50 years, se hanga 60 years, e tuana te tātou marae, I kora. This marae I'm talking about in general, korite. He pai tā rātou parahati, he pai ngā cogs turning off the committee, and they're ready, they can take on a higher labour force. We know that there's access there through, say, working income, different runanga that offer work groups. We're talking about straight to the marae. Hei aha, te middleman. We're talking about a crew that could service. There's 3 marae in my area that could service all the marae kai kōrero. Kai karanga. Hey, kai karanga, our grave diggers. Our whole team. That's what I'm talking about. Paid labour workforce. E mahi ana I runga I ngā tikanga. E kōrero reo Māori ana. Kia ora. Sounds like a pretty good idea. From the other city.
Kia ora. Hei. Mihana ki a koe me o whakaro e hoa. Kia mōi o mai koe, tipu ake au ki te whiore o te reme. Ki te nako o te tero, ki runga marae. Ko au, waru tau noi ho taku pakeke, taku mahi, te whakakati, te kati, te karaihe, I te marae ate. Nā reira e wai ana au ki ngā wanga me o whakaro hohunu ki te ata tautoko I ngā marae. Engari, me mihi hoki ki tēnei a matua, nāna no I tuku I te kotahi rau miliona tāra ki ngā marae. E nei tau e ono katahaka nei. Ki te whakahau I ngā whariiti, ki te whakariterite mai ngā paipai me ngā mahi o te whare. Kotahi rau miliona tāra I whakapau atu e te tangata te manu noho mā tāra nei ki ngā marae. Kaore anō kia o te mahi. Kaore anō kia o te era mahi. E te marae pērā ki a māua ko te wehi marae ki mō kai pāte e hoa. Ko ngā paihamu kei te tuanoi o te whare e mimi ana ki ngā tangata e moe ana ki roto I te whare. Ko ngā pāpunga were kei te taua tonu ki ngā whakonga o te whare. Nā reira tō whakao e pāna me pēhea taia a te utu mō ngā kaimahi ki ngā marae, ka pai hoki tērā whakao. E mihi ana ki tērā whakaro me te mea nei I raro I te kāwanatanga rāpata Muldoon. I whakatūria mai ia e tōna kāwanatanga e te kaupapa mahere pērā I a Maxis, pērā I a PEP, pērā I a Access, mērā momo me utua te tangata ki te mahi rungi te pāmu ki te marae rane. So I just want to acknowledge that idea where people around the marae who are doing mahi at the marae and in community events that are helping increase the health and well-being of the people. That's a great idea. I don't know if Debbie Power is here, who runs MSD. Yeah, but that's a great idea to take to Debbie Power. And under Rob Muldoon's government 40 years ago, they had these schemes where basically it was work for pay instead of getting paid welfare. And maybe that's an angle, or that's a corridor that you can take to talk with the people who work in both the Social Investment Agency and also MSD, because there's an inordinate amount of funds in there that we think can be more efficiently or effectively utilised and help improve the health and well-being of our marae. Kia ora, ngā mihi.
Iti noi o ngā kupu. When I announced that Rahiri's marae, wai tino te marae, o Korihi, o Korihi, o Korihi marae at Kaikohe, $100 million, 2020. If I die tomorrow, it'll be one of the most profound things that I announced. But none of you fellas voted for me. You said, don't vote for that dickhead. Don't vote for that sellout jerk. So you're going to vote for people who never give $1 to the marae. And I got investigated. A serious investigation conducted into Matua Shane as the provincial growth minister, because the allegation was giving $100 million to the marae of Māori. Don't underestimate whānau. When you send people like us to politics, the difficulty and the risks involved in making those bold decisions. But I did have the backing of my leader, Winston, to do that. I love what you say. He kōrero rekeneke, o rakau pene me ngā tūhaha. Engari ko tāku kia tātou, o tātou marae, e tahi o tātou tikanga, e tahi o tātou āhuatanga o te marae. Hari te me me haka panoni, engari me rapu koutou i tō koutou reanga, me pēhea rānei, tō reanga e mina ai te hoki mai ki te marae. Mehe tangata kei waho e noho ana, tī raku ana, ai, whakarite mai he kaupapa mahi, ki hoki mai ai rātou. Engari ko tāku kia koutou, e kore o tātou tikanga me tō tātou reo, me o tātou marae e ora mā te pūtea anake. Ka puta i te whatu manoa te ngākau, ka rongatau i te kōture kōrero ana mo te karanga me te whai kōrero. Learning, our speech making and our karanga, I'll be the first person to dedicate and donate my time, and I already do, because that's the gift that my grandmother gave me. But we, you, Tama, if we want new policies, etc., work with us. But please don't underestimate the difficulty of getting such a large sum of pūtea for marae as isolated as Maunga Pohatu. Take tēnā oku I hoa ai ki tēnā tamaiti rātana. Nona tērā marae. Ko wai te kaitoronga pū atu I a hau e tūnei, ka whakapau pūtea ki ngā marae pēnā te moke. Āko roto o hoki ana. Nā rere kia māmā, kia rata mai ai koutou. Kia kitea pērā rawa te rerenga o tētahi āhuatanga āwhina, e harama te pahu no nei ka oti. Kia ora.
Nā korua mō korua nei, korua haka tapu I te wai korua te rangi nei, he nui ngā mahi wahu atu I ngā marae o noho taimaha I ngā marae. Korua ngā hau ngā hui, te rangi nei marae's got to talk to councils, they've got to talk to land development, consultation, wahu atu I ngā mahi hawhai marae. So Labour workforce would help take out some of that mahi kia whakawātia, those of our iwi members to go and speak to those people. Te rangi nei, a lot of these iwi members are coming back to clean toilets and sort out drainage afterwards. Through Labour workforce, maramana tātou, it's not going to solve our issues around tikanga, around te reo. Hono he wāhi āwhina, just from what I can see as a ground person, hono he wāhi tātou, ko ai te minita, he koro atu kia hau, kia whakarite, he tima, kia pēne. Te cheaper.
Bertie, hara mai ki au, kia wānanga tahi hoki me Minister Upson, kia wānanga tahi māua ki a koe.
Ka pai, can we open Tama's calendar and put that in there now today, please? Lock that in. Ka pai, kia haere tunu ngā kore pō.
I think my thing along the lines of the Atu Ki nei kore me te kata reo aha pa tuahi ki au te kai au told, you know, don't worry about the smoke screens that are what comes out in election year and all of these kōrero. It's hard when you see the immediate impacts of that kōrero in our hapori back when we go home. You know, with our tamariki, as I was saying, and even within our own whānau, it's that kōrero that come out of the manifestos of the current coalition government are giving non-Māori the right to feel like they can exercise some kind of authority over tamariki to say, oh no, you can't speak te reo Māori anymore. No, you're not Indigenous Māori. It's those things that are hurting our whānau. Even though I'm saying that, you know, the kōrero heiahanga, kōrero karahapa, wera mo āhuatanga, kei te romo i te mamo i te hapori. Kei te wawi romo i te mamo i te hapori. Hei hanga ki e kōrero, even though that wasn't my kaupapa. But anyways, to answer the whakautu, taku whakautu ki tā te pātai a te wehi, for 2040 is what my vision would be, you know, 200 years after te tiriti o Waitangi, the signing, the vision that our tūpuna had. It's still kei te hāngai ki te tahi o ai, ki te reo Māori hoki, but it's more personal, and I don't think my answer would have been this personal if not for the kōrero that I'm seeing and reading coming out of our current government, but it is what it is. As a tae o both environmental and social that my tamahine, my kōtero feels safe in. As a te reo Māori speaking, pohanga reo attending, Papa Kāinga living iri, who has a very strong connection already to her awa Waikato, to her maunga kaupiri, and being able to grow up in 2040, however old she'll be then, and feeling like those things that she values, te reo Māori, her pepeha, those things are being valued on the whenua that she lives on the whenua that she's from. So that's more my whakara around the taiao and those areas of te reo Māori. But I think if it wasn't for the manifestos that we're seeing, or these policies that we're seeing, whether there's smoke screens or not, that's what we're seeing as a little hobbit from the hapori. That's all I know. I'm just an average Joe, you know, I'm not a nobody. That's what we want back home with our mates and our whānau. But I do really want to just care about, in 2040, having things around our taiao, like being able to ruku kaimoana and not be able to worry as much about the microplastics that either I'm consuming or I'm feeding to my whānau, or being able to plant and grow kai and not have to worry so much about the contaminants that are making our soil quality toxic for our whānau, even though we're trying to practice those tikanga around mahi and kai and reabsorb those things within our whānau to be able to practice these things that we say, sovereignty, whatever. And then most of all is being able to swim in my awa without getting rashes. I'm paddling just 10 minutes upstream and I'm literally seeing kau tiko in my awa and knowing that that's, I don't know when it will be possible for me to be able to eat and get hua from my awa, but even just being able to swim in it. Just those realities of the kinds of things I want to be seeing in 2040, not having to be in the kaupapa that we're in, not having to say, you know, we're protecting our taonga species and all of these things. It doesn't have to be fully mediated or have fully regenerated by that time, but at least not being in that whawhai mindset, as te already mentioned. So, my pātai is, what are we missing? I find it hard to believe that you both really stand by the manifestos and the policies coming out of your coalition government. So are there any kurahuna or hidden agendas that you have? What about opportunities that are going to come out of this current government for Māori, for te iwi Māori, where all we're seeing is anti-Māori rhetoric? Okay.
Well, you're looking at the billion tree man. We took $450 million and a large amount of that went on native trees. Unless you keep the focus when you do have us politicians, we only exist for 3 years. You've got the right to make us unemployed in 3 years. Shit, you already did.
Several times.
But focus, if I can be so bold as to say, focus on getting politicians like ourselves to deliver concrete results. It was no small measure to take that level of putea and dedicate it to recloaking as much of possible with native trees. But I have to say, it's our own people also who pointed out if we don't have pine trees as well, we don't have the revenue to pay the rates and to generate some putea for the owners of the land. So there has to be a level of balance. Yes, you are right. Your manifestos have left a certain impact with us. But I'm going to share a lesson with you. When we are politicians talking to the whole country, we encounter a wide variety of views, and some of them are objectionable. But I've got to be straight with you. That's politics. We find a host of obnoxious attitudes right across the community and society. And the job that we have, and we're not Einstein, the job we have is to balance, sit, and try and ensure the stuff that's all paraweta goes to the side, and we isolate the pura that is going to enrich everyone. That's what we think we're trying to do. And when we get it wrong, bang, political parties disappear. There was a period of time, ka mate te party Māori, ka ora mai anō. There was a difficult time, e kahana te rōpū reipa, ko whakamoi kore tia. So, when you are, for your generation, agitating, I urge you, go beyond the words. What are the results? And although that's not sexy and it's not as experientially uplifting as a lot of our debates about indigeneity and sovereignty, but at the end of 3 years, hea te huatau I puta, I tēnā pito, I tēnā pito. I just announced, if you're a killer diver, if you're a hapu who wants rangatiratanga on the coast, we are changing the regulations in order to get rid of these killer forests and killer barrens. You can get as much killer at a new regulation in order to kill off the killer barrens that are destroying our Taitokino coastline. That's a practical result. Where did it come from? It came from the hapu of Ngāti Wai and my own crowd up in Muri Whenua, that the landscape under the moana has been devastated by massive timber forests. Change the law, get our rangatahi, get our hapu, local diving clubs go there and start to recover the environment. Those are the types of initiatives you should expect us to deliver. And if we don't vote for us.
I was one of the very fortunate people to be involved in the 1 Billion Trees program, and working for a guy called James Brown from Waitangi, Tāmaki. Some of you know James Brown. He was a singer, dancer, movie star, and an absolute legend of Tāmaki Makaurau. We tried to grow trees out of Motutapu to Motutapu Taikehu. It was one of the hardest things that you could ever do because of all the regulatory and compliance regimes that were on top of us trying to grow trees, whether or not that's eco-sourcing the plants, the biosecurity requirements not to let Argentine ants get into the soil that was coming from a certified nursery called Ngārako out at West Auckland. So our view is that there's sometimes too much regulation going on, and we can't actually get on and deliver the kaitiakitanga or the rangatiratanga initiatives that we really want to achieve and that we really want to deliver. A couple of the great things that have happened, and I'm not talking about what colour the korowai of the government is, have been the Waikato River Authority in Te Awa Tupua, down in the Wanganui River. And whilst it might not be perfect, and I always say to people, nothing's perfect except my wife from Ngāpuhi, whilst it's not perfect, it's actually a step in the right direction to have that river authority, 5 different iwi groups that are involved in trying to recalibrate the kaupapa. But never forget this, is that some of our organisations, like one I'm a very big part of, PKW, or Paranini Ki Waitotara Corporation in Taranaki, that's the biggest dairy farmer in Taranaki. And what they're doing is that instead of saying, no, we're going to carry on our practices, they are recalibrating the way they operate. So there are some exemplary examples of how our own organisations, Māori organisations, can undertake those types of economic activities that perhaps are causing some of the issues that you described, like the tiko kau and the awa. There are some organisations that are adopting much more tikanga-centric practices, and my recommendation is for our whānau hapu, hapori and iwi, to have a look at those practices and try and import them into your own rohe and into your own communities. Because there are some very, very good things going on. What Matua Shane and myself are trying to do is help encourage those positive practices, those positive economic initiatives, but at the same time being mindful of the kaitiakitanga requirements or expectations that our whānau have.
Just noting and touching on that last example of Waitangi to Waitotare and thinking about some of the degradation that Waitangi mentioned in terms of their river, I don't think it's the Māori organisations causing that though much. So I guess for Te Pātai, how can we as Okauko Kōrua Whanaunga, how can we better support you to push some of those regulations and policies that we need in the government to make sure that it's the non-Māori organisations that stop doing those practices?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of interfaces there. One thing that I mentioned before, I'll put it in a different way, is that there are some exemplary Māori organisations that are in both the economic development space and the kaitiakitanga space, and PKW is one of them. And so when you engage with private businesses, with places like Fonterra and others, they can be used as a role model or as a sentinel or beacon of what it takes to be a good kaitiaki, but also a good organisation that's involved with practices that might be seen as quite challenging for our environment. I think the other space that we can operate in is with local government. And influence, local government often has more influence on our hapori and our communities than central government. So engaging effectively with them, making sure that they are held accountable, just as much as Shane and I are, is very, very important. Yep.
Just on that, just the last thing is, so if we're wanting, in terms of Māori procurement, and we're wanting to encourage whānau, especially hapu, marae, iwi, consultancies, businesses, to undertake that mahi, and if they do, per se, take government projects to be able to undertake that mahi, how are you two, or your parties, helping that Māori procurement process to be able to, talking about conflicts of interest, when obviously we have whakapapa Māori, and we probably have whakapapa Māori, two different ministers in Parliament at the moment. And then those become issues, and then as we look at OIA processes and all of these things, how do we support whānau Māori who are wanting to undertake this mahi, but the way that we do things, the structures as Māori, not say businesses, but as Māori, don't fit or align with the formal procurement structures that government are putting out in terms of
That's a very good question. If you are a senior figure in any government and you are in charge of pūtea and you come from a Māori background, you will be cursed by conflict of interest. So if you don't like that, don't go to politics. The second thing is, many are the Māori rangatira, going back to Te Aparana Ngata, who were tripped up by conflict of interest. It's not widely remembered, but our tupua, Te Aparana Ngata, had his career end because of an allegation of the way in which money was being administered in Waikato that he was responsible for. So you are talking about a very, very sensitive area, and you're right to raise it. But I also say, and the only experience I can share with you was when we dished out the $3 billion of the Provincial Growth Fund, 800 million about went to Te Ao Māori. Why do you think that I'm still being investigated by bullshit allegations and claims that go back beyond the 3 years I was unemployed? I come back as a minister, I'm still being investigated from 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18 and 19. I say to you, although it may sound harsh, that is the reality if you're going to be a change agent and you're going to seek to rattle the cage with the short time you have political power. People like me don't ordinarily last long in politics because I'm there to get things done. If you want to just coast along and stick with process and be safe, you will have a long career. If you want to make a profound impact and shake up the system, you always put everything on the line every 3 years. I don't know how many of you people have a career, and it only lasts for 3 years, and it's highly likely the next day you're unemployed. But that's my approach to politics. Put it all on the line because I promise to deliver a range of outcomes. On the final thing of procurement, what I'm finding is there's a gross shortage of people to do the mahi in Aotearoa, to do the mahi in our own motu. That's why we're relying on so many migrants. So I've got to tell you, to you young people who are leaders, let's get our young people more and more involved by starting in the right hinengaro and the right wairua, because there are multiple opportunities in Aotearoa. But those opportunities need quality iwi leadership and good partnership arrangements with Māori MPs like myself and Tama. But don't underestimate when you're a senior Māori MP the amount of pressure you come up to. But I don't say it to have a tangi. That's the life we've chosen. And if you don't like it, I say it again. Don't vote for us. But if you do vote for us, follow like me, I'm going to get things done.
I can actually see some other senior government officials in here too, so hopefully that same line attracts and follows through, so maybe we'll get some traction there. Yeah.
Kia ora anō. I just want to get straight to the pātai. What does 2040 look like? And I guess we want some encouragement as Māori nurses that it's going to look different to what it has. Because over 20 years ago, when national government we're in, we asked for the voices of Māori nurses to be considered. And at that point in time, we were 7% of the workforce. We're still 7% of the workforce. How do you expect us to inspire and believe if there is nothing to do? So over 20 years, 2040 looks like a Māori nursing workforce that reflects its population. That is a 27% increase in what we've currently got. We want to see Māori recognised for the work that they do, which is undervalued. We want to see the gap in terms of the pay that Māori and iwi provided nurses do get now, currently, bridged. That means in a significant, almost 15% increase from their colleagues that work in Te Whatu Ora. You're right, Minister, there is a huge immigration that is happening. A lot of our jobs are being taken by overseas nurses. 40% of our nurses are internationally qualified. When we have kaimahi tauira that are sitting out there that cannot train because it's too expensive. We want solutions around how we can support our tauira to become those nurses that can tautoko this community, because unfortunately it doesn't happen. We want kaimahi that have dreams and aspirations to be recognised and paid for what they're worth, not downpaid because they're Māori jobs. And that is one of the fear, that if we go and take on jobs and get recognised, that we are undervalued because they're only Māori. I know that the 100-day plan talked about removing fair pay agreements. That's significant given that many of us are just workers trying to earn some money because of the increasing costs of living, which we know is going to be addressed. There are policies that have been put in place already. The deconstruction of Te Aka Whaiora, which in 2016, many of our Māori nurses stood up and were claimants in the Y2575 because of not only the discriminatory practice that happened within hospitals under the Health and Disability Act 2000, whose sole purpose was to reduce inequities. What it did is it increased inequities for Māori. We continue to die younger. We get continually people that were observing us said that this is a humanitarian crisis that is happening for Māori. But still, no government, no politician stood up and acted. Until COVID happened and non-Māori were starting to die, then all resources went in to bridge that gap. Our Māori nurses stood up. They were the ones that went into communities. They were the ones that risked their lives to support whānau. And they are still now, after the crisis has happened, still putting their hand up to be recognised for the pay that they're deserved. Same skills, same expertise that you need to work within Te Whatu Ora, and yet consciously these nurses are not valued and not paid. And I assume as they do, that it's merely because the colour of their skin or because of the Māori organisation that they work for. 2040 looks like 2040 must see a change. 2040 must see a mātauranga service set up, not another Māori hospital that runs under the same governorship as the Crown, but a mātauranga service which is fully immersed in mātauranga. And that if we need a doctor or if we need a nurse or if we bring them in, they don't hold the power and determine when we come in. That is what a 2040 looks like for our nurses. Kia ora.
That's a very sharp presentation. Thank you very much. You know why many of our whānau no longer create nurses? Because the nursing council itself has gentrified that occupation. My sister's a nurse. My cousins were nurses. They were all trained at the Kaitaia Hospital, and you could be a working class Māori and get a job as a nurse. But once the nursing council and others decided to uplift the high level of entry criteria needed, it wiped out so many working class people. Your point is right about immigration. But why are you so silent? Why does no one stand up and support either myself or my leader? We have been warning that the greatest casualties of unfettered immigration is going to be working class whānau. But no, as I said to the iwi leaders, bring migrants into New Zealand that we need, who don't need us. Whānau, iwi leaders, we're not going to solve these problems such as nursing equity unless we have a simpler way of training working class, garden variety, entry-level whānau Māori coming into professions. And every year, the people running those professions create new barriers. And they think by creating new barriers, it'll give them more money. No, it's disempowering working class people who are largely from the Pacifica Māori community to come into those positions. Tāku kia koutou tautoko tia mai tēnei kōrero oku. Mena hihiana te tangata manene haramai ki konei nohoi, mainga he tangata hihingi ane e tātou. Kaua ko rātou e mina e pati an haramai ki konei, pakatahangi ana wā tātou kaimahi Māori pene me tāte wahine e kōrero ki te tā. Yes, we can do more to encourage, and we should. And the iwi partnership boards that Dr. Reti is talking about, he's already stated that they're going to stay in place, but make them practical. Getting our young working class whānau, not the ones who are going to get a scholarship and go and do physics at university, they're a tiny minority. Te nuinga o tō tātou iwi he rai wera wera. Ko rātou hei uru mai ki roto i ngā mahi pēnei. So please do work and give him the scope to deliver what he's promised to do by the iwi partnership health boards.
E poto te wāno rere ka koke tonu ki te kai kōrero whakamutunga.
Kia ora e te whānau, kia o te hi, kia koutou te hā, hei! Hawai. Ahua rere ke te wāhi ki au, i te mea, i pakeke mai au te tahi kaupapa kāri whakapono ki te tiriti kāri whakapono ki te kāwanatanga. Nā reira, kea komunitai me hiana kia kōrua kāre tēnei te whakaitia kōrua engari. Ko aku kōrua hanga ke ana ki te marea ki enei tamariki e noho nei, ki te ana au ngā tamariki a wima enei me ngā rights e mirira. Me ngā tamariki huhua, haramai ki au. Haramai ki te moana, haramai ki te waka, haramai ki enei. E whakaako ana i ngā mahi taiao. I te mea, kea rātou te wahi kia rātou. We can't sit in conflict. I can't sit in conflict, so I'm going to let Paps do that. And when he was talking about a few things, the reason why I don't want to arokia kōrua because the questions aren't being answered. Probably because you can't. And you said that you're politicians, so we're just going to leave it there. Engari e te iwi. Kia tātou te mana, we already know that. And I've been seeing seabed mining lately. So aku mahi ka puta atu au I te nui ngā tuā, i Waitangi ka whakatere mai mātou i tō tātou waka o ngahi raka ki roto nei. Nā pāpa hiki nuku mai tērā, ko tōna wahine tērā. And I see a cruise ship coming into here in the morning. And I was thinking, the ocean, this is a kōrero from Chief Jacko Thatcher, Master Navigator. He said, the ocean hides abuse beautifully. And if you don't know, Chatham Islands loses about 1,000 kilometres of rope every year to your kina that you eat, and koura that you eat, and fish that you eat. And that's stuff that we see. But we see because there's only 1 to 7 to 8 waka out in the ocean that's doing all that mahi, where I want our tamariki to come. But not to resolve the problems, but to be a solution, which is learning how to whakatere, learning that the environment's beautiful, and then now we've got seabed mining coming to play and coming with pātea, and I don't know how you can sit there and talk about pātea, knowing that your mate is willing to lift the ban. Because past, we've been raping our whenua, and now we want to rape the moana and we don't know nothing about it. There's not enough scientific evidence to be able to support what we're doing, so we're going into the unknown. And it's scary to sit here and listen. And we're just going to hear excuses, and that's okay. Because, and I'm saying this on live television because we need that, and I want to be able to believe in you. So give me something to believe in.
Nā koe e ko, ka rongo ahau I tō reo, ka maharau ki te wai ahau hoki e tamariki ana. Tino whai muramura tēnā reo o. I want to talk about how independent are we really as a country? How resilient are we really as a country? Because it seems that the whole motu has embraced the notion that we have to decarbonize and save ourselves from a worsening climatic situation. To do that, for the new science and technology, we need extraordinarily rare, scarce minerals. But we don't want to mine for them in our own country. But we do import them every day from China. So what are we doing when we are unwilling to make the trade-offs in our own country, but we're willing to import the filthy coal from Indonesia to keep the lights on? We're willing to import every month from China the minerals that are necessary for the new technology, the new windmills, the new science, so that we can help save the climate. That's the trade-off. It is great to have a challenge. Who gave you the mana, which is essentially what you're saying, to agree that deep-sea mining should take place? It destroys the ocean. Well, who gave you the mana to worsen our dependence and reliance on China? And in what way does that develop the sovereignty of our whole country? Unless we have these hard discussions, there are trade-offs, folks. We can continue to rely and put our fortunes in the hands of powerful nations overseas, like China, or we can agree that in our own country, if we want to do the climate change journey and we have the resources in our own country, we have no option but to agree to what the trade-offs are. Without those new resources, we are continually dependent on powerful nations overseas who don't necessarily share the same values that we take for granted in our country. Now, this is a rather odd response in a full-on Māori audience that is more taken to talking about sovereignty, kaitiakitanga. But please, don't for a moment think that if we rely, whether it's getting them from America, getting them from China, that our resilience and our independence is going to grow. That's why Matua Shane has been leading a debate, forcing us, everyone in New Zealand, we got trade-offs to make. As I stand here, the only reason the lights were on over the Christmas period and period in December is because we imported coal from Indonesia. That's what's happening, because our own energy system doesn't have the capacity to keep the lights on. These are unpleasant things I'm saying, but I'm prepared to lead that trade-off debate. And you probably won't find another politician, certainly not from the Māori world, or indeed from the Pākehā world, who's prepared to do that. I'm going to do that. And if you don't like it, don't vote for me.
Oh, it's pretty difficult to follow a legend of Muri Whenua. But I'll give you a couple of examples, Tuahine. You know, there's something happening down at Pakiri Beach right now around sand mining, right? And the impacts of a very negative decision is basically house building in Auckland will just go like this. And there'll not be enough houses to live in Auckland for the growing population. So what Matua has said is there are trade-offs in what we are doing. Just like there's trade-offs with PKW Incorporation running the largest milk production in Taranaki with about 3 million kilograms of milk solids. What they've done down there, it's slightly different. They've said, well, let's go into sheep milking rather than cow milking. So there are organisations that are trying to rebalance the dynamics between making money, looking after the environment, and making sure that we have social and cultural obligations fulfilled. This is not an easy place to be, where we are or where the governors of many of our Māori organisations are. But what we don't want to get to a space is that at 2050, let's say, great year with the Paris agreements, that we've got the certificate or the golden award for having the best ETS system in the world, but we are poor, and that our children have cold showers and they do not have educational and economic opportunities. Those are the trade-offs that we need to make. In the Department of Conservation, great example, I'm the Minister of Conservation. I think I saw a young Penny over here. We own 30%, as the Crown, 30% of all whenua in Aotearoa. 30% is owned by the Crown through the Department of Conservation. Okay? And you know, and guess what? Out of 30% of the land in New Zealand, there's $20 million generated. There has to be a different way of doing things in order to activate that land, not only for kaitiakitanga purposes, but also for economic purposes. And that's the balance. That's the balance that we have to look into and we have to drive into. And open eyes, informed, but have a meaningful debate.
We've got about 5 minutes to go. One more question and then we'll wrap us up with another closing question.
So is environmental collapse trade-off for government gain, pretty much world collapse? Because the whole world is going to collapse because of it.
Okay, please listen carefully. Please. Because one thing you'll get from me, Eko, is a straight-up answer. I am saying we have in our motu trade-offs to make. I'm not saying that we're going to turn the parts of our country we love into Manila, which is in many respects a cesspit. But please listen to me. As a politician who has the interests of the whole motu, irrespective of the momo, of the tangata, we cannot allow ourselves to become dependent on countries like Russia or China when we have the resources in our own country. If you choose not to do it, then don't pretend that we're relying on Indonesia to bring filthy coal to keep our power system going. Because the first thing that you'll do when the power goes out is sack our government. Secondly, we do have remarkably rare and valuable resources in New Zealand. There is a trade-off, and not everyone is going to agree with your analysis. To touch the earth is to destroy Papatuanuku. You're entitled to that view. You all are. But please bear in mind, when you think about the independence and the resilience of the whole country, we are going to have to use our natural resource base or rely on importing it from countries that are very unstable and don't share the values that you and I take for granted. That might be harsh, but I'm telling you, that is the absolute truth. Thank you very much.
I think one of the biggest challenges we have, and it's not only in Te Taiao space, but it's actually in the reo and tiriti and other spaces that have been debated this week and over the last couple of centuries, is that we get into very polarizing discussions, and that's amplified through the media. There's actually, even in the 100-day plan and the commitments that we've made to one another as the coalition parties, there's actually a lot more to be worked out, and people are trying to force us into certain yes or no positions, black or white, Tama or Shane, or whatever it might be. And what we have to do is we have to explore some of these things a little bit further before we get to a land-in. That's why Matua talks about trade-offs. There are trade-offs, but having an informed discussion with people on the ground, even around the marae discussion that our tuahine had over here before, have an informed discussion, and then we come to the trade-off solution. Ka pai?
Ko te pātai whakamutinga, and this is kind of to wrap us up. We started this by asking the question, 2040, koenei mārei kura katoa rātou e koke ana I o rātou kaupapa ki roto I o rātou wāhi. The question was, 2040, what is your vision for your particular kaupapa and what are the barriers to getting you there? And in some of the responses, Matua Shane, you had mentioned the constant balance or tensions between environmental protection and economic development. When we came to Te Reo Māori, we spoke about putting more responsibility on over to our homes to replenish Te Reo Māori. We just mentioned before around the trade-offs, and Hinerapa raised the question, does the collapse of our environment, is that enough of a trade-off? What is enough of a trade-off? And I think about examples when you're talking about opening us up to foreign investment. I think about examples closer to home. So Heuri tēnei no Tuaropaki. And we've done the best to our ability to use the geothermal to be able to power our cities. So there are already opportunities for us to reinvest into our iwi, into our hapu, into our kāinga, and empower them to make those same kaitaki decisions. They purchased a mining company by the name of MB Century because it was owned offshore. And the idea was, once we purchase it, we can slowly start transitioning them out of such extractive methods. How was this government, because we talk about the balance and the tensions, but at the moment, the only people feeling the tension of their balance is Māori. And so, ko taku pātai, how will this government support the rebalancing of that balance that isn't just being caused by immigration, but years, successive legislation that have forced us to be not only disconnected from our whenua, but also from our mind. We talk about poverty in terms of cold water. Ko te mea nui, poverty in mind, poverty in self, poverty in belief. And so, ko te pātai, anei te maria, they want to believe in something. And with all of those trade-offs, what could this government do to recorrect a lot of that?
Kia ora, kia ora. One of the biggest challenges we described during the last year is that kāwanatanga has actually got too big. And the ability of rangatiratanga to express ourselves in a meaningful way has got smaller and smaller, or even worse, dependent on what kāwanatanga does. So the mahi that your whanaunga and my whanaunga at Ngāti Te Kōhera and Ngāti Waitangi have done up in Tuaropaki, absolutely fantastic. Make no bones about it, Māori, a lot of Māori are doing it really, really hard, are doing it really tough. There's no debate about that. But Māori are not the only people doing it tough in Aotearoa. There are other people doing it tough. And if we think that it's only Māori that are doing it tough, it's only Māori that are doing it tough, then if we think it's only Māori doing it tough, I think we've forgotten part of the kotahitanga that we well amplify up on the marae. So where we're at today is that there are trade-offs, and we are absolutely focused on getting economic reality back on track in New Zealand. We went out to Utakura the other day, and we saw those people living in the bush and in cow sheds, and we won't have that anymore. We are going to take action to partner with people to actually deliver on the needs that our people have, rather than talk about it and hope for the best. We will take action.
solar power, wind power, geothermal energy. That is the cleanest type of energy. We campaigned on boosting these fellows as well, the amount of solar power, geothermal power. A great thing would be to create another big lake in Taitokero, like a clean green battery. But no hapu is going to agree to that. No hapu is going to agree for us flooding a valley, perhaps like where my mother comes from, the Honeymoon Valley, and it's a permanent, clean, green source of energy. Hapus aren't going to agree to that anymore. Okay, so we focus on wind, solar. For those of us who call Taitokero home, the first thing we've got to do is spend $100 million because the power system we've got in Taitokero is the size of a garden hose. And we need a massive massive hydrant size. So if you want a practical response, as the Kai Kōrero said, it has to be solar, wind, and there may actually be options for tidal power, I don't know. Ngāti Whātua hate the idea because of the endangerment of ngā mau o te moana I roto I te wahapu o te kaipara. But to clean, green energy, that is it. How do you fund it? That will also require not only our own pūtea, but overseas pūtea. So we're back into this thing I tell you about, foreign direct investment. And make sure that the balance is something that does not endanger our motu. But e ko, you're right. No one wants to see us burning coal. And do that, we need to fast track and turbocharge the amount of wind and solar and other clean energies we have. That's a practical response to the question as to what, if anything, is our government going to do in that regard. And upon that, you can judge me in 2.5 years.
Last comment and close up. Yeah.
We just had one more comment, and I think we've seen this in health, in the 200 billion that goes into healthcare and the 167 million that goes into Māori is 0.1 of the total funding. What we want to send is a clear message that in the future, for us to be able to aspire to the 2040 question, it is about allowing us to dream, and that is about not one more sellout, not one more compromise, not one more rebalancing that compromises the aspirations of mokopuna.
Hey, ka pai, tēnā koe, and that's probably the best note for us to finish on. Kei aku mā reikura tēnā rawatu. Oh, did you want to hear them to respond to that? Kei aku mā reikura tēnā rawatu koutou mō koutou. I tahu I te papa, e wera ai te hinengaro ki ngā whakaaro I whakatakotoria mai. O tina kei ngā pāpa, kei ngā matua. Tēnā kōra mō kōrua I whakakanohi mai ai te kāwana me te koke. Ahakoa pēr rānei te aho o ngā whakautu ko te mea nui I tai ātinana mai. Kia kanohi ki te kōrua. Kātia ke kei te whare, don't let these kōrero stop here. If anything, we might not have got the solutions, but at least we've got something to start thinking about. Ne? Kia haere tonu ngā kōrero, hei te roanga o tēnei wiki kia kahara tātou, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Te
Ai rai hoa mana mai hoki mai ki te neo ngā pāpā hotanga atu i te whare wānanga, rā te forum tent, i kona i te whare waka. Ki roto Waitangi mo te rangi tuarua, e mihi kau ana ki tō tātou kaupapa o te wā, te noho tahi ki ngā minita Māori. Me te pānara, ngā kai kōrero, ngā kai tuku i ngā pātai, ngā hunga i wero marika, i era o ngā minita o roto i te whare paremata, mihi kawana ki ngā kai kōrero ki ngā wahine kaha, ki ngā wahine toa, te Huia Taylor, Waimirirangi Ormsby, Hine Rapa Rupuha, Mārewa Nathan, Ruku Wai, Tipene Allen, rātou ko Kerry Nuku, me tā rātou kai hautu ko te Wehi Right. E hoama au we, he maharawa ngā kaupapa i puta mai i tēnei wā. Engari kia huri anō tātou kia whakatau. I tō tātou whanaunga, kua hono mai. Ka huri anō ngā kōrero mana e tuku i ngā mihi kia koutou ngā hunga e whakarongo mai ana. Ngā hunga e mātaki-taki mai ana. Tēnā koe te whanaunga.
Tēnā koe te princess o te māhure-hure, nā mihi kia koutou i tēnei ata. Hoi anō tēnei anō te mihi kia koutou katoa, ko hono mai ki tēnei o ngā hakapāhotanga. Tahi anō au kia hoki mai i runga rā, te kite i ngā mahi tame, me tana kaupapa te ātea. E rongo ana i te wairua o tērā kaupapa, e hoa. Ko kapo hakāhua o tērā mea e te whānau, no reira hei te ahi pōpea ka hakapāho atu i ngā kaupapa. Engari, e aiki a tame, ko tōna kaupapa te hakawātea i tērā mea te ātea. E ko tāna i te wehenga o papatua nuku, rau ko rangi nui, ka waiho tērā wāhi kei wainga, a ko te ātea tērā. No reira, nāna no te kranga ki ngā tāngata katoa te motu, he kaupapa rehitatia. No reira, i nā pō, i haere au ki tō rātou wāhi noho puni i te whenua. Ka kōrero au ki wetahi o ngā whānau i reira, me wā rātou hakamārama mai hiaha tērā kaupapa. He miharo katoa. Hoi no, i te mutunga, te āhua nei, he rimarau ngā tāngata i tae mai, me wā rātou haki mā, mohiana tātou tērā kaupapa ko te haki mā, he tohu rangi mārie, ne? He tohu rangi mārie, engari e aiki a tame, e hare i te rangi mārie anahe, engari, mena ka titiro mātou ki te mā o ngā haki, o ngā kara nei, hei aha tērā kupu te haki. Ko te karaki. Ko te karaki. Ko te haki he kōrero mo te Union Jack, hei aha tērā kōrero, ne. Kia mohio mai koutou e te iwi, he kara.
He kara.
He kara. Nō reira, ia kia tame, mā te mā o ngā kara nei, he tohu maumahara ki a tātou katoa, e tae ai te hakarite, te hakamahi i ngā mea katoa, aha koa te aha. Ne, e kia nei te Pākehā blank slate. Ne, me te tāhua hoki, te kitenga atu o te rimarau pia ngā tāngata ki reira, me te haka eke ki runga i a rua nui ki te whare runanga o runga. He rereke katoa te āhua o tērā pōhiri. Me te mea no e rongo ana ki te hohorutanga, te tūturutanga o wā tātou whanaunga no tūhoi. Miharo pai. Miharo pai. Ai whānau, so we've got some footage that we filmed up there. Of the kaupapa that Tame had this morning, te ātea. We're catching up later on this afternoon to have some kōrero with him out of the sun when he can sit down, because you can imagine that everybody wanted to talk to him today, and you know, he roa nei tō tātou hononga kia tame tātou o hokianga. So we'll wait for later, eh? We'll wait for later. We'll have a cup of tea later and sit down and have a good kōrero and get his whakaaro about that kaupapa. But me haro pai, there was like, so it was a pohiri, but it was a performance.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, the sound coming out of the loudspeaker as they came on.
Everyone wearing white.
Everyone wearing white. Everybody having these kara mā. And I met an interesting man up there from the Isle of Man.
Yes.
Tangata from the Isle of Man, and he's there painting. He's doing a little painting of the whole scene. Miharo pai, and I was sort of saying to him, his stuff is very much like Tame, so very interesting, awesome, and so yeah, we'll bring you that footage later, whānau, but it looks like Billy McFarlane is on our stage, and I really enjoy his kōrero. He's got an interesting past, and he's done so much with our whānau in i roti ngā whare here, so me hakawhiti atu tātou ki aia ne, me te hakarongo ki aia.
Te pānara tikanga aroro.
Mauri ora whānau.
Te kaupapa pūwhakamui a haui no whani roto i te whariherere. I whakatūria te kaupapa nei, e whakaraora o nā tangata e nono ke hare roto i ngā whareherehere. Anō reira i te tuatahi, me whakapua ke pepe a mātou ki a moiho ai koutou, a ko ai mātou, ko te arawa te waka, ko mata whaura te maunga, ko te roti iti ki te aiehinga te moana, ko Ngāti Tamatea tūtahi kawati te hapu, ko Ngāti Piki au te iwi, ko Billy McFarlane tōku ingoa no Rotorua, no reira, tēnā koutou katoa.
Ka taku te rere o taku te ka ki i runga ki te rangi, tifa te pō, tifa te ao, ka tākari te kawa. Ko te kawa tuatahi, ko te kawa nui, ko te kawa tapu, ki reira te pū, te weu, te more, te take, hui e tāki e. Tēnā rau atu tātou katoa ko Doug McCready tēnei he uri whakaheke no ngā kāwai rangatira o te arawa, he uri he toto no tamate kapua. Nō reira tēnei te mihi nui ki a tātou katoa, ko te ingo o taku mahi e pāna ki enei rangatira, ko te tiamana engari ki a hau he pononga no aihoa hau, hei tautoko i a rātou, i a rā me o rātou haerenga. Mai i ngā wā kino, ki ngā wā paira watu mō rātou ngā rangatira rā. Nō reira, tēnā rā watu tātou katoa.
Tēnei te mihi ki a koutou, kua huhu mai nei tēnei ata. Nei tōku pepea ki a mohi ai koutou, ko te arawa te waka, ko noa taha te maunga, ko i te hina te awa, ko Rotorua nui a kahu mata momoe te moana, ko te roro o te rangi te whare tūpuna, Ngāti te roro o te rangi te hapu, Ngāti oho mai rangi te iwi, ko Daryl Rogers rau, ko Selma te moana nui, oku mātua, ko Selma Rogers ahau. Mauri ora.
Tēnā tātou. Nei tōku pepea kia mohi a koutou. Ko au te waka, ko taranaki te maunga, ko ai ngongoro te aua, ko raukuku te hapu, ko Ngāti Ruunui te iwi, ko Rio ngātai tōku ingoa no Rotorua. Mauri ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko waiau, ko Koziosco te maunga, ko Genderbain te roto, noa hita reiria hou, ko Beardsley tōku wāno, ko Hera tōku ingoa. Mauri ora kia tātou katoa.
Kia roma tātou katoa, ku rangatira o ku wahine tō o ngā motu. I konei, ko waiau, ko maunga pōti te maunga, ko waikare moana te awa, ko tātāhua te marae, ko ngai te reu te hapu, ko nai tūhoi te iwi, ko nōtanga haue whāhono o tāho tōku ingoa, no murupara, no ahuriri, no ruatau nā ahau. Mauri ora.
Atumare e koutou. Ko wai ahau, ko mamari te waka, ko hene rākei te maunga, ko rota kākihi te awa, ko whangape te moana, ko te ringa mau tonu te pare nui, ko aki te marae, ko pare whero te hapu, ko te raro a te iwi. Ko hoepa matu mātana hau. E tupua ki a hau ki konei, ki moeroa, kei te noho a hau, kei te noho a hau, e nāi nei ki Rotorua. Nui a kiwa. Ko mahu mata momoi. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa, Ko taupiri te maunga, kei wainga nui o te ao marama, ko Waikato te awa, ko Ngāti Mani a poto te iwi, ko Tainui te waka, ko Ngāti Kapatui te hapu, no Aotearoa hau, ko Fabian tōku ingoa, tēnā koutou.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Anei tōku pipia kia mōhio ai koutou. Ko ai, ko mātātou te waka, ko maungarangi te maunga, ko Pākihi te awa, ko Pākihi te whenua, ko Terere te marae, ko Ngāti Rangi Ngāhere te iwi, ko Whakatoia te iwi, ko ai, ko Tawao tōku ingoa, no Pōtiki, Mauri ora.
Mauri ora kia tātou katoa. Ānei tōku pepea kia moe o koutou, ko Te Arawata Waka, ko Ngā Taha te maunga, ko Te Hina Taua, ko Kahumata Moimoi te Moana, ko Parate te Hoa te Marae, ko Wāni Rau tōku ingoa, Mauri ora kia tātou katoa. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Tāki Timu te Waka, ko o tātara te maunga, ko Tūtai Kuri te awa, ko Ngāti Pārau te hapu, ko Ngāti Kahununu te iwi, ko Tiri Tuku ingoa, Mauri ora koutou katoa.
Kia ora mai tātou. Ko Tāki Timu te Waka, ko Waimoso te maunga, ko Moana te ko Pasifika te moana, ko Apia te whare tūpuna, ko Sawaiki te hapu, ko Hamua te iwi. No James Crichton tōku ingoa. Huri no Hamua tēnei te mihi atu ki tō koutou maunga, ki tō koutou awa, ki tō koutou waka. No reira, meri ora tātou.
Pai. Kia ora whānau. Pai ane ki te rongo i te nuinga e kōrero Māori ana, engari e kōrero kē tāku, me tāhuri ki te reo tāhai whenua, pē. Me hatu ki a koutou katoa kua karapiri pini mai i tēnei wā. My name is Billy McFarlane, born and raised in Rotorua. Went to prison very early, got sent to prison for driving a car without a license, and then went to prison 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and on it went. So I've become a product of the justice system. In 2011, I got sentenced to 14 years in prison and ended up in maximum security because of my previous escapes from prison, 3 escapes. Up in maximum security, I made a decision to turn my life around. And then I ended up, a year later, sent up to Ngāwha prison up here in Kaikohe, where I became an adult mentor for a lot of the youth in the youth unit that are struggling. So from my work with them, I learned how to be a teacher. I learned how to be a father. I learned how to be a role model. I learned that a whole lot of things in my life I needed to change if I was going to stop the cycle of prison. So I looked for answers, and I found that those answers inside of our culture. What I found was that by teaching our culture and practicing our culture, that it could change people's lives. Many of the young men I worked with in Ngāwha had a turnaround from just building their identity, building their hope for life, and a passion for our culture, but also a passion to become better human beings. Now, you know, we've listened to a lot of kōrero over the days, and really over the years, I suppose, about the struggles we're having in our society. People making a lot of noise but not doing anything. We're not those people. I learned that our tikanga is a call for action. You can't just talk about your problems. You've got to do something about them. Love is not a word, it is an action. You know, support is not a word, it's an action. And, you know, I get a bit hoaha when I have to hear people making a big noise
about certain stuff and they're doing nothing about it. We always say, if you're going to bring a problem to the table, bring some solutions too. Otherwise, you're just white noise. So, you know, I like to think that I'm a voice for many men that are, and women that are still incarcerated, that don't get the opportunity to make a noise, don't even get the opportunity to vote, most of them, so they don't really get a say. But I think their say is important. Sitting up on the stage now, we have over 100 years of prison. Combined, over 100 years of prison. And that's sad, considering we have so much talent sitting on the stage too, and so much love. You know, so we need to look, as a society, we need to look at some of that. We need to look at what do we need to fix. You know, it's beautiful to hear our people speaking te reo, but I don't like it when they're speaking te reo and they're behaving badly. You know, our men are struggling to learn te reo. Actually, most of them never really did that well at school because they lived inside of a Pākehā system that was unkind to their needs. These men are all struggling daily to learn our reo. But more than that, they're struggling daily to learn our tikanga. They're struggling to find ways to adjust their behaviour. Because their reo's it's not their reo that's going to keep them out of prison. It's not their haka or their waiata that's going to keep them out of prison. It's their behaviour. It's the way they treat each other. It's the way they treat society. So although we do all those other beautiful things, we have a really strong focus on the hiningaro. And what I've learned in my 13 years of working in this space with the downtrodden, I like to say, and I'll explain that soon, is that there's lots of hope there. There's also a huge bunch of trauma. You know, we talk about these young people. When a young child is born, I know, you know, you guys were all young children once, and some of you probably have young children or moko. So children are born beautiful little human beings. And then for some, life dishes up roses, and for some, life dishes up thorns. Those children don't make a decision to be beaten, abused, raped, and poor. It just happens to them. You know, the stories that some of these men could tell you would make you cry. We pay attention when they do horrific crimes or when they're sent to prison, and it's just those bloody criminals, they need to go to prison, they need to stay in there. What about the beautiful child? What happened to the beautiful child? You know, society happened to the beautiful child. You know, like, I look at those beautiful young children, and I look at the amazing young men that I have, and I think, how much of a rangatira do you have to be to come out of the mud and stand up and still have pride in yourself and still have hope in your people, and even turn around and tell the people who abused you that you love them? You know, it's sad. What's going on in our prisons is a sad indictment of our society. It's not a Māori thing. Our people never, ever put a rope around anybody's hands or a chain and kept them away from their loved ones. That's not how Māori society works. You know, prison's a new thing for us. It's a new thing for Aotearoa. It's actually still quite a new thing for Indigenous people around the world. And you know, yesterday I was involved in the kauemate for Matua Moana Jackson, and a great man that I had the opportunity to sit with and listen to around the whole story of colonization and the whole story of prisons and the whole story of our broken societies. And last night I went back to reading a whole lot of the stuff that he wrote, because for me he's an inspiration, and what we do is actually an embodiment of everything that he wanted to achieve here in Aotearoa, bar the fact that we're still not shutting down our prisons. So, you know, Māori had a different way of managing stuff, right? We had a way of managing problems by finding solutions that worked for both the perpetrator and the victim. There was no form of punishment. We worked along those lines, mā te whakamā koe e patu. You will be dealt with your own punishment through your own shame. And these men have been too. You know, like when Shane was talking just before, I was one of those fellows who said, you're a dickhead out. And then I had to check myself, you know why? Because he actually helped us. He actually helped us through the Provincial Growth Fund and helped us get our kaupapa off the ground. And I too was lost in some of the stories by the media that's a sort of sensationalized stuff and turn things around a little bit. You know, because I'm just a realist. For me, if you help me, I'll never forget you. You know, and saying that, you know, ain't nobody going to help me better than I'm going to help myself. So I've always said, why do Māori wait around for the government to give us permission to be Māori? We don't need their money. It's good. It's good. It helps. But we shouldn't wait around till 2040 for somebody to help us. Like, you know, how many of our people are going to put a rope around their neck and kill themselves inside of our prisons by 2040? I want to know what we're going to do now. What are we going to do this year? 2040, I don't even know if I'm going to be alive in 2040. The rate I'm going, I'm not going to be. But you know, Māori, we need to rise up, We need to rise up and be Māori. We need to practice our culture wherever we want, anywhere in the world, in any forum, in any place. We don't need permission to speak our language. I don't care what the government says. They're not going to stop me from speaking it. I don't care who's in government, whether it's the Mickey Mouse Club or not. I ain't going to stop practicing the stuff that's keeping me safe. And that's my Māoritanga. My Pākehātanga sent me to prison. My Māoritanga pulled me out, and it's saving me now. Give me some money or don't give me some money, it's not going to change that. These men here have dealt with, they're on the benefit at the moment. They're living with nothing. But they're living with the pride that they're rising up and they're going to be able to go home to their families and be amazing leaders for their families. That's more important. You know, there's been so much harm done here. Some of it we can't undo, but we can teach them how to smooth their way through it, and we can do that through our culture. You know, I'm not a guy that likes to do too much haka, especially war haka, because you know, again, this thing I was reading around Moana Jackson last night around how we became the warrior race. We're not the warrior race, whānau. We are the race of love and kindness. We became murderous because we got lost. We need to find our way back and learn how to treat each other properly. Our values for pū whakamua are love and kindness. So we've got these men that they say some of the worst in the country. They say, I love you, my brother. I love you, my bros. That's their favourite word. They're learning to love ahakoa, te hara. No matter what they've gone through, they're learning how to love. So, you know, as Māori, we need to be promoting our best gift more. You know, it's awesome that we can do kapa haka and that we can sing and we can do all of those sort of things, but it's also really awesome when we're not doing that, if we're learning how to look after each other properly. We need to get our homeless off the streets. We need to get our moko out of state care. We need to get our brothers and sisters out of prison. We need to create papakainga like what we've got down in Rotorua, where we provide a loving space for them to cry about their trauma and change their lives. Let's not get lost in this political bullshit. You know, I'm glad I'm not a politician because I don't like talking too much. I like to just get out there and do stuff. And, you know, I feel for some of them because some of them are doers too, but they're getting lost. There's so much talking going on, you don't have time to do anything. So, you know, whānau, my message to Māori today is for us to rise up and become the people our ancestors once were when we sailed the ocean, when we looked after each other, when we grew our kai, when we never ever laid our hands on our women and children or each other for that matter. If we want to, you know, if we want to live up to the aspirations of our ancestors, which was to protect our whakapapa, we need to make sure that we protect our whakapapa. We can't do that by beating our women and beating our children and killing each other. Otherwise, in 100 years' time, there will be none of us here to live on this beautiful land. You know, it's an easy thing to do, whānau, and I know for every one of you, you've come to Waitangi for a reason. You didn't come here because you don't support Māori. Otherwise, you would have went that way. You're all here because you want to hear the voices of our people and you want to take some gifts away from here. So I just encourage you all to don't forget who we are as Māori, who we really, really are. It doesn't just happen in a song, in a dance, in a voice. It actually happens by what we do. Apai? So, koina, maurura tātou.
Kia ora no tātou, ko Doug McCready tēnei, ko au tētahi o ngā memo te poari o tēnei kaupapa. Tuatahi, e mihi ana ki a koe Billy, e hari i te mea he kupu ke atu I o kōrero I o kupu I tēnei ata, tēnā koe te rangatira. We've got quite a few speakers to go through. I'm just going to make some points and just get straight to the point. How many people have got family in prison, been to prison, in and out of prison? Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Hundreds and thousands of Māori are in prison. Hundreds and thousands of Māori men and boys are in prison, are in programs, are being dealt with by the law. In fact, I worked it out that if we are roughly 14 to 15% of the population, which I think we are, then that means Māori males are about 7% of the population and about 60% of the prison population. So it's almost 10 times the ratio that our men and our boys are thrown into prison. And you can't tell me that just because of my toto Māori and my toto whakapapa, I should be in prison. Even though I acknowledge I come from my tupuna tamata kapua, who had many different nana kia haere me and his tricks and all that, but that ratio is disgusting. And in fact, I go one step further. There should not be one Māori in prison. Not one. If you look at the story of this, and I don't want to repeat Billy, but if you look at the story of a people who once owned vast lands, vast forests, resources, clean water, manu, food, ocean, all of that, and you rip that away, and then you make that people get by on little wee remnant land blocks or little wee remnant resource, and basically whakapoharatia te iwi, then that's what you get. You get crime, you get problems, and you get dysfunction, and it's disgusting. Decade after decade after decade goes on and on, political party after political party goes on and on and on, and still the percentages are the same of our people. I chuck them in prison. And then as Billy said, you get that viewpoint, they're bad, got to keep everyone safe and all that. What a load of rubbish. So I'm just going to conclude my kōrero. I've got a few notes here, but I can't really be bothered looking at them. I'm just going to conclude my kōrero. For me, it's an honour to stand by Billy, to stand by Sally, to stand by all the brothers and the sisters who have put in the ringawera and the mahi to create this kaupapa. And for me personally, this is all about the truth. The truth is that these are mighty men. The truth is that these men have talent, have ability to activate both sides of the brain, both the left and right brain. Usually that's called ADHD, or it's given some dysfunction name. No, it's not. It's talent. It's the ability to innovate. It's the ability to lead. It's the ability to create. And as Billy says, it's the ability to love. So much of our potential as iwi Māori is getting chucked in the clink. And this program, as small as it is, as humble as it is actually found a formula and a method through the innovation and leadership that our team has undertaken to turn that around. So my hope for the future is that we end up with 100 of these or similar all across the country. Kia ora tātou.
Mihi anō. It's my privilege to be here again at Waitangi. This is the fourth time I've been here with the Rōpua Pūwhakamua. We first came in 2020, and I acknowledge Matua Shane for that, because as Billy said, when we came up that year in 2020, it was the first time we actually got some funding from the government, eh? So before then, our kaupapa was being funded through Billy doing teaching te reo and Rotorua and funding the kaupapa himself, because it's something that he had a vision of when he was inside prison, eh? So when he said, when he was up here in Ngāwha, working with the young men up here, working with the young men that were the same age as his own sons, and inspiring him that when he came out, he wanted to do something different. He wanted to take the skills that he had, that he always had as a natural-born leader, and turn them around instead of doing something that was helping him but maybe harming the community, to helping him and also helping the community. So when he came out in 2017, 2018, I think it was, and started up the Pūwhakamua kaupapa, I had been living over in Australia where I'd been getting up to a few silly things myself, living on the streets, living in a life of addiction. And when I finally built up the courage to say, this is enough, I need to come home and sort my life out, I came back to Rotorua where my father was born and raised, and moved in with my parents. I met Billy first as my te reo teacher. So I turned up at his class one day wanting to learn my reo. You know, I'd had a pretty good upbringing. My parents were hard-working, middle-class New Zealanders who raised me well, sent me off to Hato Tipene in 1985 so that I could get a good education. I'd like to acknowledge a couple of my 3G brothers out there. And, you know, although I had the opportunity to do something then and understand what being Māori really was, I didn't have it because I lived in this colonised world. I lived in this world of, for me, to be honest, back then it was almost like I was ashamed to be Māori. Everything on the news was bad Māori, our numbers in prison, failing in the education system, everything, all the negative key indicators were all against us. You know, and I don't know why that is. I still don't to this day. But you know, what I do know is that we've got something special going on here. And like Bill said, we can't wait till 2040. We've got to be doing the mahi right now, people. And when we do it for these men, we do it because we care. So before we got that funding, and I was part of this program with Bill, when I came back from Australia, I met him at the te reo class. He said, what are you up to tomorrow? I said, nothing, I'm on the dole. He said, come and hang out and meet some of the men that I'm working with. You know, you'll be good for them and they'll be good for you. So he invited me out, picked me up the next morning. I liked it. I said, can I come back tomorrow? He said, yep. So he picked me up every day for the next year. Picked me up and took me out, and I hung out with the men and did the kaupapa, started taking reo lessons, started going to wānanga, starting to really embrace my te ao Māori. You know, he picked me up and dropped me off until he got sick and tired of it, and then he gave me a little car so I could drive myself out there. You know, and we talked about this vision of growing this kaupapa. And then when we managed to come up to Waitangi and we got that first bit of funding, I got a job. So, you know, and I heard Matua Shane this morning say, you know, how many of you out there have only got a job that might only last 3 years? My first job when I got it with Bill was only lasting 10 months because that was when our funding ran out. And then we managed to get some more funding because people realised that we're doing some good mahi. And now my job's about to run out in June unless we get some more funding. You know, so like Matua Shane said, you know, if you want to make a difference, you just got to make a difference right now. You've got to step up to the plate. If you're passionate about something, you will do something about it. And as I stand here in this beautiful whenua overlooking the ocean, my mind, you know, I thought about it last night. I can't help but think about the men that we work with in prison. Bill and I go up to South Auckland Wiri Kohuora prison every week and work with a couple of units of men in there. We've got our own dedicated whare called Te Araki Pūwhakamua, the pathway to Pūwhakamua. And we work with men who have decided that they want to make a change in their lives and they don't ever want to go back to prison. That's our goal. When we bring men out of prison, we say, come out and never ever go back. And if it means you have to stay in there for 6 months, 1 more year working with us, learning, doing all of the stuff you need to do while you can, while you're in there, so you never return, make it worthwhile. You know, and we do that. We've had a lot of successes. We've had a lot of failures too, because change ain't easy. As I say to the men all the time, if it was easy, everybody would do it. But it's not everyone's doing it because it's hard. And so as we move forward in our kaupapa, you know, we've just been secured some funding for our site, although our operations fund says that we've got to get that sorted before June, otherwise I'm going to have to go back to work for free. But I'm all good with that. As long as I got a roof over my head and some kai in my belly, I'll be all good. You know, and the men that we work with, I just want to acknowledge them all that are here today. this is one of the smallest rōpū that we've had for a while, and that's just because we're actually going through the process. I think we've got 7 parole hearings coming up this month. So, you know, if we do well, and we've got a pretty good working history with the parole board that we've built up over the last couple of years, because they know that we're tūturu with what we do. As much as we don't want to send men back to prison, sometimes people aren't ready for what we offer. Sometimes men aren't really ready for change. Sometimes they talk about it. Sometimes they're just looking for a place to go to so that they can get out the gate. And we get that, we understand that. We wanted to help those fellas too. And we've done our best, but sadly some of them have had to go back because we can't risk the kaupapa for those that aren't ready for what we've got. But those that are ready for what we've got, man, they step up and they do some amazing stuff. Like Bill said, you know, like my cousin, so this is my cousin here, my tuakana, Doug, who's come on as our chairman of our board in the last year, and has always been an inspiration to me. You know, for these men, when they want to make the change and they embrace it fully, you know, the outcomes that we've seen have been amazing. You know, when me and Bill take the men over the summer months, we say we shut down, eh? So like we go on holiday for a little bit, even though we don't stop working, because I live on site with the men 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know, over the Christmas break, we were out at the lakes, have swimming, out on the jet ski, barbecues on, over to Makatu, kohi kai moana. You know, and we see our men with their children, and they're interacting, and we see them being fathers, we see them being partners, we see them doing all of the things that a lot of us take for granted, but they haven't, because I think one of the bros was saying this was his first Christmas out in like 12 years or something. You know, I can't even imagine what that would be like. No, but for me and Bill, when we see them playing with their kids, having swims and doing that stuff, it's like, that's our payday, eh? That's the payday for us. So this kaupapa, and we put this wero down every year that we've been here, is a kaupapa that needs to extend. We need these little smaller, papakainga, not rehabilitation, but habilitation centres, eh? Prisons don't work. When we go into prison, we walk into a unit, there's 60 men in there. Sadly, probably only 15, maybe 20 of them are really wanting change. And of that 15 or 20, probably only 5 or 10 of them are really ready to put the work in to do it. But because they're surrounded by all of those other people that aren't ready for it, they just get pulled down. So that's why we have to, when we, as a small group, we succeed better, because we can put all of our time and effort into the men that we work with. Again, I just want to thank everyone for being here today. I look forward to coming back again for my 5th year. But I just want to hand the mic over to one of our men, Reo, who's been with us for, actually, no, I'll let him have his kōrero. Mauri ora ki a tātou.
Mauri ora. My apologies, I'm just going to sit down if that's okay. My vision for Aotearoa, 40 years' time, is that we have a lot more papakainga like the one that we have here. You know, they say to you, you commit a crime, you do the time, you're going to go to prison. But no one ever takes the time to look at like Bill said, the young man that was raised in the way that he was raised before he went out committing crimes. No one asked what it was like for the man who committed a crime, who was sexually abused, who was hungry 5 days out of the 7 days out of the week, who wasn't clothed efficiently, who was denied his birthright to be loved and nurtured in a safe home. They don't ask you those things when they send you to prison. They judge you on the action that society expects you to be disciplined for. But as a community, we've forgotten that hurt people go on to hurt people. A lot of the men in prison have been traumatized by those who are meant to love them. Mothers that, for whatever reason, decided they didn't want to mother them. Fathers who decided, for whatever reason, it was easier to beat them like their father beat them, instead of loving us. how much better would it be for our rangatahi coming up, for our marae and our community, if we had a lot more papakainga like pūwhakamua, built upon values such as love and kindness. I was denied that all my life, and I became a very bitter person because of that all my life. And I went on to be the very person that I despised in my own father and my own mother. And I became a predator towards my own children and the mothers to my children. You know, the two simple principles such as love and kindness, when that's shown towards a man like myself, it starts to change my thinking. And when you can encourage and show a man by action what it takes to actually change his thinking, then he can stop being a selfish little prick. Then he can start to think about the impacts that my behavior has had on those who I was supposed to be responsible for, who I was supposed to love and show kindness towards. Not run around with a false korowai on my back that teaches me to kill or be killed, to take or have what you got taken from you. After coming through the washing machine of this colonized country that we live in, those were my beliefs. That was my tikanga. Because I was denied the privilege that a lot of you lovely people sitting here before us today have had to grow up in a home that teaches you love and kindness, teaches you who you are. I thought that I was just going to be a criminal gang member who went to jail every year like I have for the past 25 plus years. And I accepted that that was my life. That's what I was taught. And it hasn't served me very well. Fathered 16 children, to never ever be there to raise them and teach them anything other than bad examples. I was denied two fundamental things in my life, and that's what this kaupapa gives me, eh? But love and kindness. It's changing the way that I think. It's making me a lot more unselfish because I've been a very self-centered person my whole life. And I don't blame that on colonization. I understand the reasons why me, my father, my grandfather were addicted to drugs and alcohol, why we were violent, but it's not the excuse, eh? Being able to see why I was molded the way that I was in the society and the family that I was given to helps me to see that those were the cards that I was given. But through love and kindness, my bros over here have given me another stack of cards. And they don't look selfish. They don't look like violence. They don't look like polluting our community with methamphetamine, adding on to my own trauma, you know, other people's trauma like others had added on to mine. I'm proud to be a Māori man, and I'm learning how to be a Māori man. I thought the Black Power and the Mongol mob was all a Māori man was, because that's what I saw. Beating up on your wife, on your children, what a Māori man was, because that's what I saw. Through this kaupapa, I'm starting to see the lens that I see this world through now is a lot brighter, a lot prettier, and a lot more hopeful than the lens that I took off before I started on my journey of change. So to our Māori people out there, spare a little bit of a thought the next time you hear about all the bad things they say about our tāne mā, our wahine mā, who are going to prison, that each and every one of us here have a story, and not all of our stories are pretty, and not all of our stories are going to serve us well. And that's what our brothers and sisters in there want for us Māori that are out here, for us Māori to have a voice, that there's a story behind each and every inmate in prison. And a lot of it is built upon the foundation of trauma. real bad trauma. So it's a privilege for me. You know, I could have sat here and given you the whole sad story about being sexually abused, and that, but it's not about that. It's not about the thorn, it's about the rose. It's about the rose that comes on that, eh? So thank you for hearing my voice. I'd like to thank my bros over here who have helped me with my self-esteem. I've always been a bad man, very few words. To be honest, I went to the toilet at 5 to 10 and I said to myself, I'll take the growling later and I'll just take off. But this has been another opportunity for me to grow, and I appreciate very much. Nō reira, mauri o kia tautau katoa.
Yeah, so just before we wrap up, whānau, again, I just want to reiterate the thanks to our wahine that support our kaupapa. My partner Rose, Selwyn's partner Michelle that's sitting there, and our wahine toa that sits amongst us, Sarah, who's a foreigner but holds fast to her Māori values. We tāhoed her from the prison we work in, and we said, come and work for us, it's better than in there. So thank you, Sarah. But I just got a he kōrero whakatūpato ki te whakamutu tēnei kōrero. So I just got some words of warning before we wrap up. And it's a story I've told here before, Waitangi, about a fishing village overseas. And these people, they fished out of this village for years and years, and then one day they went out to fish and they came back with nothing. They came back with nothing, and they said, we're going to have to move our village south a bit to go and look for new fishing waters. So they moved. Anyway, about 2 weeks after they moved, the birds started falling out of the sky. Just dropping dead all around the place. And they picked up some of those manu and they took them in to let the scientists have a look because they thought it was some sort of disease. And when they opened them up, what they noticed was the puku was empty. These birds had been, generations and generations of them had been bred and lived at that fishing village, eating the scraps that were brought in off the wharf. So come food time, they knew they'd just go down to the wharf and the kai was there. So what happened when they moved down country, the birds lost their source of food. What that made me realize is that, the birds lost their tikanga. The birds have been living off the scraps of another for so long, for generations, that they had lost their tikanga and now they were dying. And I thought, that's us. That's Ngāi Māori. We're eating the scraps of the other for so long, we even think we're them. So ko te mea tūpato whānau, we don't want to be like the birds. And so in a couple more generations, there are no more Māori left. So something to think about for us, eh? See my cousin Scotty there. Mauri ora, bro, thank you for your support. And also, hai to thank you for all the mahi that you do in Rotorua. Every one of you is actually that stands as a kai awhina, a kai tautoa, kai arataki for our whānau out there. The group of helpers is very small. So, and the mahi is very large. So thank you all that whatever role it is out there trying to make a difference for not just our people, but for people in general. Mihi ana ki a koutou katoa. So these boys are going to do a haka for you. This haka is for you. For you guys, okay?
They can sit down if they want.
No mai, no mai, no mai e tama, kia mihi atu I hara mai rā koe, I te kunenga mai o te tangata. I roto i te ahuru mauai. Kata ka te pai, kata ka te pai o hua ki pauri. Hua ki pauri. Ano. Nau mai e tama, kia mihi atu au. I hara mai rā koe, I te kunenga mai o te tangata. I roto i e ahuru moai. Kata ka te pai, kata ka te pai o hua ki pauri. Hua ki pauri. Nau mai e tama, kia mihi atu au. Oh, turuki, turuki! Turuki, turuki! Whana, whana, hara mai te toki! E ngā rangatira tēnā rawa tu koutou mō koutou kōrero aroha kia mātou ngā hunga whakaora, hunga whakarongo, no mātou te whiwhinga nui, anei te aroha kia koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Paki paki mai, mo te ropu, whakapū mau.
Toi tū te triti, toi tū he wakaputanga. Te reo irirangi o tautoko e hakapāho atu ana i ngā kaupapa katoa, marunga pukamata me te taupānga ngā whare kōrero me ngā iarere, iwa te kau mā iwa irarima, iwa te kau mā whetu irarima, tahirau mā toru irarima ngā iarere. Waitangi, 2,000 te kau mā whā. Are are taringa mai, kia kotahi ai tātou.
Tēnā mai a koutou ki te whakamohio atu, whakātu o tō koutou ao, nō reira tēnā koutou. Oro te raite te whānau, pēhana te whare. Pēhana koutou, kei te pai, ai. Oh, kia kaha mai te hi. Kia kaha mai te hā. Ai, nau mai, haere mai, mena, ka tai anō koe kia tai mai, ki te whare wānanga, he whare wānanga, he whare akoranga. Welcome to our house of learning, our house of sharing. I hope you all are having a fantastic day. Our pānara kei te heke mai, kia hati wā? Awa, hara mai, hoki mai ki te waiata anō. We've got about 10 minutes before our next panel's up. I'm just going to call them up to get ready on the stage. And it is our taumata te ao o te tangata turi. Ko Eri Hokianga, rātou a raua ko Kim Robinson. So this is our whānau taringa turi, ne tangata turi. They're coming to share their kōrero, their experiences and their learnings, and what they think about what does a 2040 future look like in Aotearoa for all of our whānau. Ai, e whānga turu? Ai, e toringa turu anō? Ai, hara mai, hara mai. Okay, so just as our pānara is getting ready, our whānau here is going to sing us a waiata. Tēnei mātou. Tarana kei waho! Turu anō? Paki mai e te whānau, paki mai. Oh, that's... Let me start this morning off just with a short karakia and sign language. Just asking ngā atua for some guidance for today for our kaupapa as we talk through our experiences. And we'll ask for understanding as we share with each other about all the different experiences had in regards to te tiriti o Waitangi. Ko kahu rānaki, tōku maunga. Ko pau kaua, tōku wau. Woo. Ko taki timu tōku waka. Ko rangi ko ānaki tōku hapu. Ko kahu rānaki tōku marae. Ko Ngāti Kahunuru tōku iwi. Ko iri tōku ingoa. Ko hokianga tōku whānau. And now I'm just going to... Oh. Nope, never mind him. When my son started school, there was no interpreter there or nothing, and there were a lot of barriers to us. We didn't know much about te reo Māori or anything. There was a lot of barriers we faced. So really, to be honest, Māori and Pākehā tangata turi, deaf people, we experience very similar barriers. If there's ever big hui, Māori hui, there's never interpreters there. And of course, a lot of it's in te reo as well, and that's a huge problem. We actually need trilingual interpreters, many of them for our future. At this point in time, there's only one trilingual interpreter that is qualified in the whole motu. We have other people called communicators. They might not have the qualification, but they might be native speakers, for example. They might have sign language or one or two of the reo. Another obstacle we face is when deaf people try and access mental health services, it's a completely different ballgame. We really need something that's targeted towards tangata turi, to understand our culture that's layered over. They often can't sign, service providers. So we have to try and find ways to move around there and bring them into spaces where people can understand sign language. My big goal and my hope for the future is to encourage people to learn sign language, especially te reo speakers. We totally need people who can kōrero and te reo, sign language and English. And that's all from me. I'll hand over to Kim.
Ngā mihi iri, thank you so much for speaking first. Kia ora koutou, everybody. So my name is Kim. My family arrived in New Zealand in 1982 through the Clifford family, the Clifford Waka, and they arrived in Nelson in 1982. And they arrived in Blenheim. In Tora Mara Marina. Not far from Spring Creek. At the time of the First War. My family have settled and remained in that area for quite a long time. And that's an explanation of my generation, and my generation has been deaf. So I was born and raised deaf. I grew up orally, no sign language. My school was only teaching English, so I had to learn to lip read. I wasn't allowed to sign. And there were many barriers that I faced through education and growing up. So I'm an advocate for language rights. And I focus on maintaining full access for language rights for everyone. For example, we have a relay service that we can access through our phone and other digital devices. But you have to type to use this relay service. For 7.5 years, I've been advocating for this.
I think it was in 2004, maybe. We actually asked them to, this relay service that had been established, can you please add te reo Māori into the service, not just English and sign? And of course the government said no. So that meant that people that were perhaps already te reo speakers and had a hearing loss and became hearing impaired, that they couldn't access that service in their own language. The National Foundation for the Deaf, they had did some research into this kaupapa, and they said that there were 880,000 people in New Zealand that had a deafness or hearing loss to some degree.
And about 26% are actually Māori of those 880,000 people. About 26% are either deaf or hearing impaired. So that means that we've experienced a lot of language gaps and communication barriers and gaps. I will go into that further. But that's a little bit about me and my role as a language advocate. Ngā mihi kia koutou.
Tēnā tātou katoa. I roto I tēnei whare. Ka mihi au ki te kaupapa o tēnei rā, ko te tiriti o Waitangi me o tātou tūpuna. Nō reira, tēnei au ka mihi atu kia koutou. Ko wai tēnei e tuake nei. I te taha o tōku papa no te rarawa kaiwhare. I te taha o tōku māma no Ngāti Parau. Ko Richard Perry tōku ingoa. Ko hau tēnei, e tuake nei, e mi atu nei kia koutou, o te rā kia rātou kua wehi atu ki tua o tō tātou ārai, I roto I tō tātou hapori turi Māori, ko Patrick Thompson tērā, ko Michael Wee tērā, ko rawa ngā tino kaumātua, o mātou te hunga turi Māori. Kia ora tātou. I'm also a kaimahi within Te Ropu Waiora Trust, and it's one of our kaupapa Māori services that mahi for our hunga turi Māori. And it wasn't until we established kaupapa like our national hui for Māori Deaf, where our tamariki, our moko, our community had the opportunities to access services. Kind of like today, how we have a broad audience watching me present my kōrero, we have to be the example for our tamariki. And it was back in 2005 at Orake Marae. That was the start of one of our mini kaupapa, which was learning Te Reo Māori sign language concepts. And that's where we learned concepts of whakaaro like whakapapa, mātua, pepeha, learning about our iwi, hapu, marae, and all of this information which hearing Māori and hearing communities have accessed, but us as Turi and Turi Māori haven't. And so we haven't accessed our own Māoritanga. And that has been one of the barriers that has been spoken about, which is why we need our language, New Zealand Sign Language, to be visible. And it's a priority for our Turi Māori. And also the kupu for Ngāti Parau, kupu for iwi like Ngāti Awa, we need these published. And then so that they're accessible for our tamariki, so that they can learn about who they are. And so we don't have to rely on what's been happening, which is if there are hearing parents with a Turi tamariki, they feel lost and they don't know how to feed them their language. And so because that doesn't happen, that means there's gaps, knowledge gaps throughout the generations. And so we need our reo, which is sign language, and we need that knowledge transmission to our tamariki, to our mokopuna, to our mātua, to our kaumātua. And that is something that we can achieve, mā tātou katoa kataia. And so even though there are many barriers facing our community. Come back to the importance of having our reo and having the whanaungatanga between te reo Māori and te reo Turi. Hei oranga mō tātou katoa. And it's through this mātauranga that Aotearoa whānui can flourish. And I think adding in with that, we need our regional variation or our mita throughout the different iwi as well. So these are just some of the whakaaro, hei kai mā tātou katoa, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Just going to add some extra now. I went to summer school for the deaf in Christchurch. And when I was at school at that time, we weren't allowed to sign. We were hit with a belt if we were caught signing with our hands. It was oral and speech only, like this. But at lunchtime, I'd go hide under the trees with all my mates, and here we go, the underground. The teacher would come, we'd stand stiff like this. She'd be like, "Are you signing?" "No, miss, no." "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I'm sure." Every year, same old story, hiding our language away to keep it alive. So my mahi, let's talk about that. I teach New Zealand Sign Language, and I've been doing that for 30 years. And now Māori Sign Language, ringa tohu reo. And that's been 7 years on that journey. Both him and I, Kim and I, have done that. And learning tikanga as well, things like karakia, etc. When I grew up, it was always English and quite a te ao Pākehā way of living. And I was kind of left behind. I just thought, oh yeah, never mind the Māori world. Didn't understand it. But Kim actually took me under his wing. And then I started to learn a lot more. And also my interpreter over there, together, we've learnt a lot. I'm in Te Wānanga o Aotearoa. And in a course there, she's come to be an interpreter with me. And I've learnt a lot there. And then I found a great mamae inside myself, that I've been in this Pākehā world that I didn't really fit in all this time. And I've got this understanding now. Now that I've seen Te Ao Māori, oh, I'm just in love. It's opened so many doors. And but man, going back to school, that's different. But I'm so happy for all the increased knowledge I've learned, and in the community I can share it with. But there are some Māori that don't understand. Some do, they understand about the marae, but many don't have any knowledge of Te Ao Māori. I work all around Te Tai Tokerau. I visit all these different marae. In Moerewa, Dargaville, anywhere. I go to all these marae. I also go to Te Kura Kaupapa Māori o Kaikoi. I've learned so much there. I didn't know. I've done so many things wrong, but even the tamariki there, they've stolen my heart. I've learned so much from them, and I just love them all. And I have to mention our whānau over there, Te Whānau Manihira. They were in my heart too, special place. Makes me shed a tear. I just didn't know this was possible. It made me just bring a clarity to me. It's made me very emotional. My whānau never had me under their wing like that to explain these things. There were so many barriers I faced, so I love seeing them and what they do. That's all. I'll pass it over to Kim. Oh, thanks, Eddie. Just following on from what Eddie said, give a wee bit of background. In 1880, there was an international conference, and a decision was made internationally to stop teaching sign language in schools. So that meant all the deaf children of that time grew up orally, verbally. And of course it impacted us here in Aotearoa as well. Many deaf children went to school back then, and the only language they had access to, if any, was English. So, and that included all the tangata turi tamariki as well. Yeah, it's true. If the teachers caught us signing, we would get the strap. They forced us to use our voices or try to speak. I grew up and I learnt speech, some of the words was wrong. And the reason for this is the speech therapist obviously can hear, but they're not Māori. And so they had their own Pākehā way of teaching me certain kupu, and that isn't actually how Māori would say that kupu. And I wouldn't know because they're the speech therapist. And that's actually still happening right now in the education system as we speak. That's still happening. Remember the first time we were given some options of what we wanted to learn at school. So obviously I grew up in Blenheim, around that area. So that's quite normal in that area to have te reo speakers and for te reo to be spoken. But when I went into school and asked to add that as a subject of one of my options, the teacher said, no, I'm not allowed to learn it. That was just in 1986, not that long ago. At that point, we still weren't allowed to learn te reo Māori as deaf people. And still, if we use sign in class, we would get in trouble at that point in time. I remember the first time I used sign language in class, the teacher was like, whoa, and whacked me. That was my first time. I'd never experienced anything like that before. Lots of my friends started to explain to me. For example, my partner's over there, the beautiful Ro. Her uncle's deaf. He went to a deaf school, and of course that education was in English. And during the school holidays, we'd go home. And when it was on a school holiday, the school would instruct the whānau at home, speak English only to your deaf kids. And so that's another way that our te reo was disintegrated away from our whānau and our home life as well as our school life. Another barrier that we face when we're trying to learn te reo. We do want the language to keep growing. We don't want to be a bystander in our own journey and just watch what's happening. We need to be involved front and centre. Because they're a part of us too. We're all in this together. We shouldn't be separate. You can do English, you can do te reo, none of you can mix up. Let's get in it together in the same waka. I know that we have to talk about or need to talk about between us te tiriti and all the different barriers we face, especially barriers accessing information, communicating, where we're not there yet. We're still fighting, still advocating. We obviously need a bigger pool of interpreters. We definitely need more trilingual interpreters, those that can kōrero Māori, English and sign. We definitely need on TV and other places captions and subtitles in te reo Māori. As mentioned before, there's 880,000 people in Aotearoa that experience hearing loss or deafness. Imagine if on TV you go and click it on, and most of the time it's in English, right? And then you turn on the subtitles or the captions, And 99% of the time, it'll only be in English. Even the captions are in English. So where is the te reo captioning? Like, it's so rare to see any. So those 880,000 people have no choice but to rely on English as a way to access any information on their television. That means their mind, it's almost like a brainwashing. They're locked into that way of learning and thinking and communicating and access. So we definitely need more subtitles added and captions added in te reo. And even when they're speaking Māori, like on the Māori TV, they just say speaks te reo. We need it there too. So this is impacting and affecting us on like every kind of issue, and especially issues linked to te tiriti. We just have no access. Our minds and our thoughts are not up there and not engaging in these different topics because we're still grabbing and reaching for the real basic levels of access through language. That's just my input. Thank you.
Tēnā koe Kim, mō au kōrero. I think just following on from all the kōrero and the whakaaro that have been presented, I think in terms of sign language, the language itself is different. It's its own language, but also there is some te reo Māori sign concepts which are unique to te ao Māori as well. So for example, the sign for Ngāpuhi is shooting a musket. And so normally we've changed it to Ngāpuhi, which is north or northern. A bit more PC than the musket. But it wasn't until somebody used that non-PC sign and got teased that the whakaaro actually happened of, we should change it. And so each different hapuan area have their own kupu. And I remember one time I was teaching a class, and this particular person was from Manukau, but they signed M cow because that was the lip pattern and that's what it sounded like. But that's not Manukau, and the message was misconstrued. And I just thought that Manukau had heaps of cows. And that within itself is the oppression, and it's not through these kōrero and these wānanga that we're able to change. And so the importance now is bringing this mātauranga to our Turi Māori communities where they haven't had the knowledge and they haven't had the access. And so by way of example, the Manukau old sign was around in the 1990s. And how the process of the Manukau sign name changing was we found a picture of the Manukau harbour, and we were told the kōrero of the waka arriving in the Manukau harbour. And then we took that kōrero and made this sign, which is Manukau, which reflects the harbour in the wai. And it wasn't until that happened that our community then adopted the new sign for Manukau. And so that's an example of the development that we need within Te Ao Māori, but also for our community and our whānau out there. While there are resources out there, we need to develop our own resources for our whānau Turi Māori and get our members from those rohe and those iwi to create the kupu and then create their own mita and regional dialect for their hometowns. So for example, using my mete Kim here as an example, sometimes the concepts don't match, aroha mai. And so some people might use the word kōrero, but in te reo Māori, we use te reo Māori, and it's clear. Because it's talking about the language itself and the fluency in the atahua tanga of te reo Māori. And so this is a process that we're continually developing. And with that, we will be developing the whanaungatanga with our ture Māori and our Māori communities. So anō, tēnei au ka mi atu kia koutou katoa. Tēnā tātou. Handing it back to Kim.
O ere. Kia ora, Richard, for your speech. So now, coming on from before, Kim and I have been working together for the last 7 years. At the beginning of our journey, the 7 years journey of teaching reo rotorota, we were quite amateurs, driving around, sleeping in tents. We knew, though, that the kaupapa would grow into its own and it would just take time. And I'm so proud to mention how far we've come till to now. Thanks, Eddie. One thing I did want to actually just mention. I'm involved in an organisation called Deaf Action, and that's an advocacy organisation. So one story I'd like to tell you is about being on a plane. You know when the screens drop down? And it's a safety announcement that's dropped down? I really wanted them to add a little interpreter on that screen when it drops down to tell everyone what they're actually saying, obviously in sign language. And the Civil Aviation Authority said no. So I started a petition to get that law changed. And they still said no. Because they have a policy that says it's English only. That's actually in their policy written in. Do you remember last year, guys? It was around the time of Te Matatini. Do you guys remember? There was a flight that was on the news that time that flew from Wellington to Auckland. And it was the crew and everybody it was completely in te reo, all the staff were speaking te reo. There was one tiny part of that flight, though, that had to be in English. Guess which part? That safety announcement. So I complained to the Office of the Ombudsman. They did ignore me, to be honest, a wee bit. But then he looked into it and he found that the Civil Aviation Authority had actually gone against the UN Convention of Human Rights for Disabled People. That meant the Civil Aviation Authority is ignoring that UN Convention actively. The United Nations Convention against the Rights of Disabled People. When that's not being adhered to, it means that the flow-on effect is that we become isolated and separated from our rights, our own basic human rights. And that's an example of the government and the Crown and the underlying policies that take away our rights when they focus on English only, for example. So that's part of what I do. I try to change laws and policies. So I hope that one day, next time we're on the plane, all of us in the plane, and the screen drops down, there'll be subtitles in te reo, there'll be a sign language interpreter, there'll be all of our languages there. That's my dream. Obviously, we still have these problems It's a part of our society. It's part of the deaf world, the hard of hearing world. There's so many barriers. Language is so much more than just speaking and writing. How we see language, it's our culture, it's all around us. It's important for us to carry on this fight, to keep fighting. We know we have the right to be a part of our own world and to use our own language. But at the moment, it feels like we don't have those rights, to be honest. So we're still in a very weak position. We need to use our rights to fight for our own rights to access the world in our own language. And we're still working on it. So if the government decides to put Te Tiriti to a vote, we know what's going to happen. All of that information is going to be in English. So just like Te Ao Māori, where's Reo Rotorota? Where's our access? We're in the same waka. We also, as tangata turi, need your help. We're all in this together. We can't rely on the government to help us. We need your help to make this happen for all of us so that our language can grow. Thank you, guys. And we'd just like to introduce our new speaker.
Kia ora everyone, my name is Jared, and apologies, my deepest apologies, I just got here. It's lovely to see you all, and thank you everyone else for introducing me. So I'm from Ngāti Maniapoto, and my work here today is that I'm actually filming a documentary for Māori TV. So thank you all for giving me this opportunity to come and be a part of this panel. I'm also busy about the place filming everything that's going on here today. I think it's really important to get out that message and educate people about Māori deaf here in New Zealand, because it's very significant the barriers that people are facing here and how we can connect that all to the treaty. So thank you all very much.
I'm just going to, if you don't mind, take this opportunity just to teach you guys a little waiata. If you'd like to do that, do you want to learn? You might know it already. It's called Te Aroha. If you'd like to join in, please stand up. E tū. And if you want to watch me and follow me. What's the waiata, whānau? Are we going to do a question and answer? Sorry. E noho. Aroha mai. We're not there yet. My bad. Kontaku here. Apparently it's... Does anybody have any pātai? We're opening the floor. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Jump the gun. No. Oh, aye.
How are things going? Kia ora everybody, taki pēkea hau, taku pātai. How are things going for accessible marae?
I'd like to answer that. Yes, I will. So, We often hui tangata turi, Māori, every fortnight. Actually, I'll answer your question. Some hapu have actually got improved access, I can see, and have set up systems. Those ones especially that have been quite active and asked for hui. And there's been some that have been doing that mahi for a few years. Others are not in the same position. 12 years for some. Often a barrier will be funding from service providers, etc. And obviously the goal is to provide that information and pass it on to our tamariki, and we still need to improve in that area.
I think just adding on to the pātai in terms of our tangata turi Māori accessing our own marae, it is difficult because obviously we need interpreters. I think also we do have a deaf marae in Auckland, but personally I feel like we don't utilise that resources enough. And it's also not accessible because it's in Auckland and we're all over Aotearoa. And one of the ways we can increase that access is trilingual interpreters. But I know that that's a finite resource, so we need more interpreters. And we know that we all go through barriers, whether you're deaf or hearing. And we have the right to access to communication and education. But without that, we don't, what do we have? And it's important we access this now, and we're asking for the support and we're asking for the aroha to achieve that. So that's my whakaaro on that, Taki.
Deaf whānau definitely have barriers to accessing marae and of course to accessing te reo. A lot of my whānau and friends have said to me over time, I don't understand what they're saying. We do actually have a trilingual interpreter. And when they're there, oh man, it's so different. It's a world of difference. Everything's comfortable, communication's clear, we're part of it, we're involved. But when we don't have that, nothing. But obviously the interpreters is our key issue. A trilingual interpreter makes a world of difference, and that's what we need moving forward as a community.
Anei taku kōrero whakamutinga. Taku hea ngā whakaaro o te taumata nei. Koia ana ke te kaupapa i tēnei rā, ko whakareo rotorota i ngā kōrero katoa. Koenei te kaupapa tuawha o te rānei, kore anake e tūnei te hunga e whakarotorota nei te reo. I te pāoka whakaata, i te ierere, ko ngā kōrero e whakapāo atu ki te ao, ko te hunga e mohi ana e tae te whakarungu. Kari anō, ko taku hea o whakaaro ki tēnei kaupapa, hei whakanui, hei whakatairanga, te reo rotorota, kia rongo o nā whānui tia ki tēnā nama a waru rau mano nā tāngata e turi ana. Ana, hea o whakaaro.
Kia ora, ngā mihi for your pātai. This advocacy journey has been a really, really long one for deaf people. Slow steps and always in English. It's not enough. We need captions. We need those captions when they are provided to be in te reo. English is not even an official language. New Zealand Sign Language is. So on TV, that's a barrier. We can see the picture, yeah. But do we receive the full amount of information like everyone else? No. So my organisation, Deaf Action, we actually took TVNZ to court, to the human rights courts. That was a few years ago now. So the aim of that was to get interpreters put on the wee screen and on the TV when it's there, we'd be in a wee corner. You might have seen it before, and up in the treaty grounds, I think you would have been able to see it if you were there yesterday. The interpreter will be in a wee square in the corner. But TV in New Zealand, they don't want that. So we tried to negotiate with TV New Zealand. And they're really adamant, no. During that time of COVID, when it was really heavy, you would have seen the interpreters on the TV at that time, behind the Prime Minister and her updates. But we still need access to things like the news every day, weather. I don't just need to hear it from someone else, like a brother or whānau member. We need to have our own autonomy. We need to receive it in our own language so we make our own decisions. What if my brother told me the wrong information or had his own views in there? That could be tainted by his own perspective. That wouldn't even match my view. Or any of our views, we might all be different from each other again. I want to have my own views, my own thoughts, make my own decisions. But at the moment, we have other people deciding for us. Another barrier. We're still waiting for just for the Human Rights Court to report back on this. It's been 1.5 years now waiting for their response. We hope that this year the court will have a finding for us. So because it's important, of course, that we get our hands on all the information freely available to others. I don't want what everyone else thinks the information means. We need it ourselves directly. We need to make decisions for ourselves. It's part of being responsible for ourselves, and it's our responsibility to ourselves. But I can't do these things for myself if I can't access any information. On the west coast of the South Island, there was flooding. There was local news on the TV. It wasn't an emergency live feed, but it was in the news. The information was out there. But if I don't receive it in my language, I could just drive straight into the flood zone. I wouldn't get that information. Oh, I'd find out when I hit the water. So just an example like that is important why we need access in real time. An interpreter on the screen is an easy answer. I hope that does sort of address your partai there. I absolutely agree with you. Yeah, I want full access, obviously, of course. But again, the powers that be, the organisers, we want to meet with them, try to make improvements, recommendations. hope that does answer your pātai, but thank you. I'd like to also respond.
Currently, at the same time right now, I'm involved in a project for sign language and Te Reo Māori and English on Māori TV. We've got my film crew are out here somewhere trying to capture today, and we will be putting this on Māori TV. We've received the funding in order to make a full, accessible, a bit of television that is accessible for everyone out there in Aotearoa, including that for 880,000 hard of hearing people in New Zealand. As Kim was saying, and all of that kōrero about interpreters, I 100% agree, but another issue that we really need to focus on is deaf, creating for deaf, and putting a spotlight on the deaf community, particularly Māori deaf. There's so much information out there that Māori deaf should be exposed to, but in their own language, and it needs to be sent out there all across Aotearoa. So that is what I want, to make sure that that knowledge is equitably accessible for all. We don't want that lack of equality to happen. You know, and I'm really proud of Māori Deaf and the work that they do. And it's a start, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to see more Māori Deaf there standing up, representing us up there on the marae, and presenting in NZSL, and because we will be mesmerised by our own language, and having that representation of us up there on the marae, I think, is super important.
Kia ora, Kim, it's Huhana here. What I want to say is, during the emergencies we've had since the earthquakes, we were promised not only sign language, but better access and better response for our hawa. What happened in the floods last year was an absolute breach of all of that. And I spent that night where our mayor in Auckland did nothing. I spent the night with our ture whānau, trying to tell them what was going on, where the emergency shelters were. We managed to get some out, but there was no official communication. Now, I sit on the Human Rights Review Tribunal. I haven't seen any case come before us yet around emergency communications, because for the ture whānau, you guys were placed so at risk that I was worried we were going to lose some of you in the floods that night. We had a tetraplegic that was evacuated, and they couldn't evacuate his wheelchair, so the hospitals, the rest homes wouldn't take him. He was left in the police cells overnight until the next morning when wheelchairs could be got. Now, we really do need to get a relationship with our emergency response teams to make sure that all information is accessible to all New Zealanders, all of us here in Aotearoa. Because without that, it places you at risk, and it places the rest of us as well. Our kapo whānau can't get information in a way that's accessible for them. Our learning disabled can't get information that's accessible for them. And that places us at high risk. Kim, I know you've done a lot of work in this area, Richard as well, and I'm sure a lot of you others up here. But what can we do to work together to get change? And for things like even this event here, there's access issues, especially around trying to park a wheelchair hoist van and do it safely and be able to get me to this venue. It's almost impossible. And tomorrow it won't be able to happen. I can't see me being able to come back tomorrow. And that really saddens me. But what can we do to get interpreters here, to get information in accessible format, to get the event fully accessible for our communities? Because as Māori wahine, I want to participate, but I've been denied for decades. I've been here in the past when our ture whānau, remember Whiti and Michael Wee, when they were standing outside their vans with the flags flying and no interpreters present. No one could communicate with them. So I put a wero out to everyone here. Let's make this place accessible so all of us, our whānau hawa or tangata whaikaha, our disabled and our deaf, can all be a part of this venue. And I'm really glad to see Turi up here on the stage today, because we also have never had a voice at this place either. Kia ora.
Kia ora whaia. Just like to respond directly to you. And I think, for example, we have an institution that trains interpreters or people who are wanting to become interpreters, but we haven't had many Māori, tangata Māori wanting to learn to become interpreters. And that leads into another one of the take is the course is only taught in English. And it's following the university's policies and procedures, but it's all whakaaro Pākehā. It's not accessible. For our whānau Māori, there's no Māori components within that course. It's whakaaro Pākehā course. And so where is the place and the space within a space like that for us as Māori? There's no te ao Māori within that. And potentially a solution is setting up our own institution. And so, for example, AUT has their Māori department, Te Arapautama. And so they have funding, which is for hearing people who are fluent in Te Reo Māori. But it doesn't provide the communication bridge that our community needs. So that there might be fluent Te Reo speakers, for example, but there's no resourcing or supports for these people to become interpreters. And so that relates to our take of needing more trilingual interpreters. For example, our whaia Stephanie, ko ia e mauana I tērā haki me ki. And so whaia Stephanie has been fighting that battle for years and years, but we need more. So ko tērā taku whakautu ki tērā kōrero.
Thank you for your pātai and for the answers that follows. And now we're at that exciting part I was at earlier on. If you would still like to participate in learning our waiata, now is our time. And we're going to do it 3 times, just so you really remember it when you leave. The interpreter's got a cough. Is anyone a good singer? It's fine, she'll do it. So copy me. Te aroha, te ingoa o tēnei waiata. Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi Māori e, tātou, tātou e. All right? You got it? Anō. Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi Māori e, tātou, tātou e. Anō. Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi mari e, tātou tātou e. Kia ora koutou! Oh, inoho, inoho. Oh, we have some special guests. You guys know the words. The interpreter won't need to sing this time. Hand it over to the experts, whānau. Say in waiata. Te aroha. And thanks for that injection of making us feel powerful for this moment in time, sharing our journey with you all, whānau.
He tangata ke koutou, he tangata ke mātou i roto i te nei whare tātou tātou e aro. He tangata ke Paki mai mo te tangata tiri, ngā tangata tiri. Au e te atahuatanga, ngā mihi aroha kia koutou. Mihi whakahoki kia rātou, ngā mihi aroha. Tore, whā. Ngā mihi aroha. Kei te pai, paki mai anō. Mo tēnei, enei rangatira o tēnei wā. Aroha mai. So our whānau have been one of the fortunate whānau that gets to see Mātua Kim and Mātua Eri especially quite regularly. Once a week he comes to our whare and teaches our tamariki. And, you know, what we've learnt over the past couple of years about tamariki and growth, emotionally, spiritually, and cognitively, is the more languages they have, the better everything is. They have more cognitive development in their brains, the more languages that they have. They have more empathy and manaaki in their aroha because they can see the world from different perspectives. So Mātua Eri, whenever he comes to our house, he just brings that beautiful wairua. Our tamariki, and they love his classes 3 hours a week. They're learning. And our little baby, Te Ata Mahina, She can speak 3 languages, and she's only 3 years old. So her first language is Te Reo Māori. She's our first baby to have Te Reo Māori as her first. We've only been speaking Te Reo Māori fluently for the past 2 years. Our tamariki took 2 months to learn Te Reo Māori. The adults took about, they're still going, 2 years later. But our tamariki, tere te haere ki te ako. And and then ringatohu reo Māori is the 3rd language that they've been learning. And they're so much more confident than us in it, I'll tell you. But our Pepe, yeah, she can do her whole mihi in Te Reo Māori, and it's powerful e te whānau. It's powerful. Paki paki mai anō, mo tēnei mahi rangatira. Ai. Nō reira, ko pau haere te wā. We have such a massive day.